Welcome to the Complete Streets Commission September 10th regular commission meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in accordance with public health guidelines. I'd like to introduce Complete Streets Commission members and city staff present. I am Chair Athena Yerkomos. Commissioners present include Sally Cole, Jackie Sebrian, Meredith Bergen-Bailey, Matthew Raskoff, Scott Herscher, and Kevin Rennie. City staff present include Azalea Mitch, Public Works Director, Joanna Chan, Transportation Manager, Kyle Parada, Assistant Community Development Director, Christiane Choi, Senior Transportation Planner, and Katrine Maki, Senior Transportation Planner. Katrine, would you please provide instructions to the Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair Yerkomos and members of the Complete Streets Commission. Welcome everyone to the September 10th Complete Streets Commission meeting, and thank you for attending. For members of the public who wish to provide public comment for any item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on that item, if you are in person, we ask that you fill out a speaker card available at the back table and return it to the clerk's desk. If you are participating virtually, attendees on Zoom may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. That concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrine. Under reports and announcements, city staff and commission members may communicate general information of interest regarding matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No commission discussion or action can occur on any of the presented items. Katrine, can we have the reports and announcements?
Yes, I have two items. Last night, the City Council passed a resolution to apply for a supplemental highway grant from the TA to provide additional funding for the Willow Class 4 project. Also, since we last met, the Planning Commission adopted a resolution recommending that the City Council certify the final environmental impact report and approved the Parkline project this past Monday on August 25th. With this recommendation, the City Council is now tentatively scheduled to certify the FEIR and approve the project at the September 30th City Council meeting. That concludes my reports and announcements. I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you.
Does that mean that on the September 30th meeting of the City Council, if anyone on this commission had comments about the transportation aspects of Parkline, that would be when they would be made?
As individuals not representing the commission, correct?
They can mention they're on the commission. They can say that they're speaking on behalf of themselves, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next is public comment. Under public comment, members of the public may address the Complete Streets Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. You are not required to provide your name or city of residence, but it would be helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Katrine, please call for general public comment.
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card from the back table and bring it to the clerk's desk. Please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Gregory Ferris, would you like to come up?
My name is Greg Ferris. I live in San Francisco. I want to thank everyone for your service. I also want to apologize. I'm going to run out because we have dinner guests tonight. But I have some slides. Oh, okay. Thank you. I have some slides on traffic in West Menlo Park. So next slide. I want to talk a little bit about, next slide, about 3 orphan blocks in West Menlo Park. If any of you leave here and go to Sand Hill Road, you're going to drive by these blocks, most likely. And the challenge is that the blocks have different jurisdictions. So the dark gray is unincorporated Menlo Park. The light gray is Menlo Park City. And there are 2 blocks of Santa Cruz Avenue. They're orphan blocks. You go 1 block and you change just jurisdiction both ways. Sharon Road, you leave Menlo Park, hit Sharon Road for 1 block, and then you go back into the city. And I want to show you some of the problems that come up because of this mixed jurisdiction. Next slide. And this shows them again with some orientation. And I'm going to speak to some of these lines in the following slides. Next slide. So the section of Santa Cruz Santa Cruz Avenue has a lot of traffic, about 10,000 cars per day, equal to more than Coleman and Bay put together. Also, that 3rd block I mentioned, Sharon, is a major cut-through traffic. So the intersection between this heavily trafficked Santa Cruz and the cut-through causes a lot of problems. Next slide, please. Also, there are 2 schools here, La Entrada School, Oak Knoll School. So these are primary routes to those schools. And the same routes to the schools are also have the cut-through traffic roads. For bicycle routes, this is probably the primary bicycle route to get to, for recreational cyclists, to get to Portola Valley and the mountains. Next slide. For pedestrians, Oakdale and Sharon is the only opportunity to cross from west to east across Santa Cruz Avenue for 0.6 miles between the stop sign at Avey and Palo Alto Way. So if you don't want to take that, if you don't want to be on that cut-through street, you've got to go about 1 mile out of your way. Next slide. So when we look around, we see progress occurring in the region. And I'll show you on this slide, it shows the Santa Cruz Alameda project. You've probably seen that. It's being done by the county. Originally, that 1 block of Santa Cruz north of the Y was part of that project. It was dropped. And I'll show you a bunch of other examples of things that were funded, but then they got crossed off the list because largely maybe because of the mixed jurisdiction. Regarding speed limits, Santa Cruz Avenue used to be 30 miles an hour. The county lowered their speed, I think in 2007. I'm not sure the date of Santa Cruz, but those 2 blocks were not included. 1 block in the county, 1 block in the city. It took 8 years for us to convince the city, don't have 1 block that's 30 miles an hour, and many years also for the county, for the city. Similarly on sidewalks, if you look at this region, there's sidewalks all around, not in these 3 blocks. The city put in sidewalks to help get to La Entrada on the west side of Alameda, but clearly not on the east side because that was up to the county. And the county didn't do what, help there. Bike lanes all around except in red. There's no dedicated bike lanes. The neighbors asked the county to put in bike lanes on their piece at one point when they were restriping, and they said, no, we can't do that. We have to coordinate with the city. This shows a map, a bicycle map, and this same stretch is shown with that red arrow. You can see there's a gap in the bike lane, which really shouldn't be there. And then finally, the Berkeley Safe Track study, very nice to have that. And you can see all the green stars for intersections that were part of that study, and 3 stars in this orphan region that were not included. These are very important intersections when they weren't part of that study. So I think the core problem here is the mixed jurisdiction of these regions. It's frankly a pocket of neglect. Nobody's doing anything bad. It's just that how do you care for 1 block when you're trying to make plans? And so personally, I think the path forward on this is to finish the annexation of the triangle. That was that little part in green.
Can you clarify what that means? Finish the annexation? What do you mean by, what does that mean?
So if we go back 1 slide. this doesn't show everything else, but that green triangle,
Yeah.
a bunch of neighbors applied to the city to be annexed
I see. Okay, thank you.
10 years ago.
Okay, thank
The
you.
city has not completed that. LAFCO's waiting for the city to sign off on that.
Okay, thank
If
you.
that one block gets annexed, then the city has control. So there's two ways. One, annex it,
Yeah.
and then the city has control. And frankly, the city's not taking care of their block.
Mhm.
But now if there's two blocks plus Sharon, it becomes more of a, I guess, a core piece that could be acted on. The other option is to coordinate between the city and the county. That's going, nothing's happening. I mean, in all the years, there hasn't been any coordination on these two blocks.
Mhm.
And just to give an example, if you look at the various stream beds in Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, they're all concrete lined, except for one. And that's San Francisco Creek in between the two counties. So if anybody wanted to line that one, they'd have to work together, and it hasn't happened. It's good for the creek, I think, not to be lined, but it's just an example of what happens with the
Right.
mixed jurisdictions.
Right.
I wanted to bring this to the attention, and I plan to follow up with the members with an email, just asking for suggestions, because I know this is public comment.
Thank you. I can't make a comment, as you know, but if you if when you follow up with an email, if you would include your slide deck.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you all again. I'm sorry.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have an additional public comment online. John, you are unmuted.
Hi, this is John Langbine. I live in Redwood City. I periodically traverse Menlo Park on my bike through various routes. And I want to briefly discuss or mention the problem of, I guess, the Alpine Path as it dives under Junipero Serra, adjacent to Stanford lands. I think a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, probably one of the El Nino events, it essentially washed out that path as it dove under Junipero Serra. Excuse me. I think the city, I think, partially repaired it, but it's still a challenge. Every time I ride that or cycle that, and I'm only going one direction, that's going toward Sand Hill. It's kind of a challenge to handle the dip. It's a sharp, very sharp dip, then there's a sharp rise. I don't think I would want to even try to ride that if there was another bike coming the other direction or a pedestrian. So I guess my message is that needs to be fixed, not the degree that was done a couple years ago, but truly fixed. It's on a slumping piece of land that going into San Francisco Creek. So anyway, that needs to be worked on. I've communicated with staff, and they seem, at least as of today, they might actually think about it. So that's my message. Thank you.
John, can I ask a clarifying question? Is this the part of the path that it connects the intersection of Junipero and Alpine with the intersection of Sand Hill and Santa Cruz?
Yeah, it's adjacent to the golf course.
Yes, yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
and I think it was probably put in when I guess that would be Santa Cruz, I guess, on the south side of Sand Hill, when it was widened to accommodate more lanes of traffic. That must have been, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. I don't remember, but so that path goes under an overhang. And the overhang is I guess would be Santa Cruz, or the extension of Santa Cruz.
Yes, yes.
So,
All right, thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Having no one further in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thanks, Katrine. For regular business, the commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require commission approval. The first regular business item tonight is E1, accept the Complete Streets Commission minutes for August 13th, 2025. Is there any clarification from the commission before I take public comment? No comments or no questions. So Katrine, please call for public comments on this item.
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card from the back table, bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in the queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. Do I have a motion and second to accept the minutes? Commissioner Bergen-Bailey for a motion, and Commissioner Rennie for a second. All those in favor, raise hands. Oh. Okay, I was not here. So. Okay, the next item on the agenda is E2, receive an update on the Grand Boulevard Initiative. So Samtrans staff Cassie Halls, Major Corridors Manager, will introduce this item.
Hello, everyone. Did you want to start? Okay. Okay, great. So my name is Cassie Halls, and I'm the manager of Major Corridors at Samtrans. Thank you for having us today to provide an update on the Grand Boulevard Initiative. I'm also joined by Jake Buffenbarger from Caltrans, as well as Patrick Gilster from the TA, SMCTA, who are partners in this effort, as well as Nicholas Yee, who's my deputy project manager, and Charles E. Chang from Samtrans. So I'll be providing an overview of the Grand Boulevard Initiative, which is a multi-agency partnership to implement transportation improvements on El Camino. And one of the things that we're bringing to you today is an update on a planning study that we're looking to adopt at the end of the calendar year called the Grand Boulevard Initiative Action Plan. And I'll provide a short overview of this as well as an opportunity for you to provide your input. Thank you. So what is the Grand Boulevard Initiative? This is a partnership between Samtrans, jurisdictions along El Camino Real, including Menlo Park. Katrine and Azalea have been involved in this effort, as well as the TA, which has joined us today, Caltrans, CCAG, and MTC. Both MTC and TA are helping to support funding for this effort. And we also have on this broader task force advocates and also business groups in San Mateo County. And Samtrans is working with these partners to try to lead momentum to transform El Camino Real and transportation in particular. And we're looking to advance a unified vision focused on mobility and safety on this critical north-south corridor that serves as both the main street of many local communities, including Menlo Park, as well as an important regional connector. And we may ask why is Samtrans leading this effort? Why are we trying to do this broader partnership with the TA, Caltrans, CCAG, and MTC? The reason why we're doing this is that we think it's really important for us to all, align our policies and speak with one voice on what we want on El Camino. And for Samtrans in particular, we have our Route ECR, which is one of our bread and butter services, providing about 30% of our current ridership of our entire system. And for us, speed and reliability on El Camino is super important, as well as the ability for riders to safely access bus stops and also make their first last mile connections. And the only way to transform El Camino is to think big and to work with all of our partners to transform the roadway. So how are we planning to do this? What we have done is we've launched this planning study that sets the vision. We've also done extensive consensus building over the past year through a series of workshops with city staff, as well as advocates and business groups. And what we're doing is we're working closely with Caltrans to initiate a coordinated Caltrans project development process that ultimately means that cities don't have to go at it alone or finance their own first stage of the Caltrans project development process. What we're doing is we're doing one whole process that's called the project initiation document, which is the first step of the Caltrans process for the whole corridor in El Camino, the whole El Camino corridor in San Mateo County. And so what we're hoping is that this kind of creates an economy of scale. We're sponsoring the first phase through a grant that we got from MTC and the TA. And we're looking to, as much as possible, streamline implementation and pursue, a faster improvement to El Camino. Next slide, please. So I'll speak a little bit about just the structure of GBI so you are aware. So GBI is made up of a larger task force, which includes city and agency staff, as well as Katrine from from Menlo Park, advocates and business groups. And then we also have a smaller working group of just the jurisdictional and public agency staff that is focused primarily on implementation. Next slide. So there's a lot of activity happening along the corridor. This map is a little washed out, but hopefully you have a better visual in your handout. And there's a variety of folks who are leading efforts. Cities are doing some transportation studies. Samtrans is doing some, Caltrans, CCAG, and the TA. And ultimately, the GBI action plan and this coordinated Caltrans process will serve as a blueprint for all this work. And individual studies will provide design alternatives, which will be advanced to the Caltrans process. One reason why we kind of have to, move along both this local planning efforts as well as the regional effort is that El Camino Real is both, a main street for local communities and provides this important, regional service. And so ultimately we need both context-specific designs that are responsive to the local communities, as well as seamless experiences for all users. So facilities that, don't just end at city boundaries. Next slide. Next slide. So the GBI action plan is intended to be adopted by both the TA and Samtrans this winter. And the bedrock of the action plan is all of the work that the city staff and advocates and business groups have contributed over the past year with the task force and working group. So we've gotten extensive input from our city staff partners in every step along the way of developing this plan. And the action plan is intended to create a unified framework that the countywide, regional, and state agencies can establish, and that the local agencies contribute to, but ultimately select preferred designs as a part of their local planning efforts. So we're not prescriptive. We're not telling what local cities need to do. We're mainly just setting a menu of options, kind of a boundaries around what we're proposing for the whole corridor. And we're working with all of the cities to define what the preferred designs are in terms of the types of things we want to see on the corridor. And this also checks the box in terms of what Caltrans requires as a feasibility study. Next slide. So this is just a visual of how we sought input from various folks along the way. So I mentioned the engagement from the task force and working group. We also have a director level steering committee from the 5 agencies that I mentioned. And we've also, as we are today, presenting to city councils up and down El Camino and providing an opportunity for feedback from council members. And then lastly, after this is all complete, we'll be seeking adoption from the Samtrans and TA board in the winter. Next slide. So we worked with all the stakeholders in our GBI task force to craft collectively what our vision is for the future on El Camino. And what we came up with is that El Camino Real is a safe and vibrant street where people of all ages and abilities travel comfortably. So this is not what El Camino is today. Unfortunately, it doesn't meet these needs right now, but this is our North Star for our effort in the future. Next slide. So I wanted to go a little bit into, what's going to be a part of the action plan in order to get your input today. So through all the work we've done with the working group and task force, we've identified the following priority problems. So there's a lot of problems on El Camino, but we have to, in order to be productive and to focus our efforts, we have to figure out which ones are the highest priority. And so through extensive work in terms of doing data-driven research, as well as talking to all our city partners and the business groups and advocates is that the biggest number one issue on El Camino is safety. So what we're seeing on El Camino is unusually high rates of fatal and serious injury crashes, particularly for people walking and biking. And the way that we're seeking to address this problem is to adopt a safety-first mindset to eliminate fatal and serious injury crashes. In addition to the safety problem statement that I mentioned, El Camino Real also has a highway-like design, which is, a problem in terms of safety, but also in terms of mobility. And so this discourages walking, biking, and transit use. And so our approach for this is to transform El Camino into a complete street that works for all users. And then lastly, it's very challenging to do work on El Camino just due to the extensive process for a state highway. And so our way that we want to address this is by working together collaboratively with Caltrans and other partners to create a new framework for change to align vision, process, and funding. Next slide. This slide is intended just to give you a sense of the types of things that are being considered as a part of the action plan. And so this is informing a menu of options that will be carried forward into design alternatives that local jurisdictions have either already developed or will be developing in the future. So this includes things like wider sidewalks, separated bikeways, bus lanes, transit signal priority, wider medians, lighting, things like that. And not necessarily is there this in every location. One thing is the corridor, the right of way of the corridor really shifts throughout the county. So in Burlingame, you have a very narrow right of way with those huge eucalyptus trees. And then there are segments in Daly City and San Bruno that are much wider. And so there's more opportunities in those wider sections. However, these are all of the types of streetscape changes that we've heard from cities and from partners that they would like to see. Next step. Yeah. So one thing we've worked closely with Katrine and other city staff on is ensuring that the corridor-wide vision that we have will align with the plans and projects in Menlo Park and vice versa. So what we're doing in terms of this is we are, setting this broad framework, and ultimately alternatives will be refined after this first phase. So I'll talk about timelines, but we're not right now, deciding on what the preferred design is for each city. That decision will come later, but we're working with cities to define a rough set of alternatives that can be moved into this first phase. Next slide. So I'm actually going to pass it to Patrick and Jake in a second, but I just wanted to introduce this slide and talk a little bit about our timeline and costs associated with this plan. And this slide has a lot of information, so bear with us. And I can kind of give you a simpler description of it, but this just illustrates the Caltrans project development process. So there's these phases that I talked about, the PID phases where we're planning to start. But right now we're on the farthest left box called the GBI action plan. So this is the planning effort that's currently underway. Then we'll move into design and then construction. And so this whole process is going to take a while, about 8 to 10 months, I wish it was months, 8 to 10 years to see construction happen. However, we will be working to develop small scale spot improvements before then. But given that this is, very long timelines, it's also high cost. So it's going to cost in the ballpark of $750 million to deliver the 25 miles of streetscape improvements up and down El Camino in San Mateo County. And so where Samtrans is and our project partners show our value is leading this process. So we're trying to sponsor the first phase in the hopes that cities don't have to, spend a ton of money to go through the Caltrans process. We are, working together to try to reduce that cost. So maybe I'll hand it over to Patrick and then I'll pass it to Jake.
Sure. Thanks, Cassie. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm Patrick Gilster, the Director of Planning and Fund Management for the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. For those that may not know exactly what we do, we manage the Measure A and W sales taxes that support just transportation projects here in the county. I think Katrine was mentioning earlier, one of the projects that'll be submitted to our highway program, which could support a lot of these efforts in the future as well. One of the things that Cassie and I have been talking about intricately is kind of the ultimate cost of improving everything along El Camino Real throughout the county is that $750 million mark. For context, the Express Lanes project that is out on 101 is about $550 million. So I like to compare it that way because it is a big undertaking and it is even more coordination across multi-jurisdictional boundaries than that project was. Whether you like that project or not is a separate story, but just kind of for context of the scale and order of magnitude of what we're talking about. But one of the things our agency specializes in is our partnerships with Caltrans and funding the different project initiation phases from project initiation all the way through construction and managing those types of mega projects. One of the things that we also bring with our partners at Samtrans, we're all under the San Mateo County Transit District umbrella, is our grants folks. They help us bring in a lot of the funding for that. And one of our hopes with this is should we continue to get city support that we're moving in the right direction, that you want us to continue with this effort, is that the Transportation Authority, as Cassie was mentioning, would co-sponsor this effort. And what that means is we would make ourselves eligible for this project as a project of countywide significance. And that means we could take on that responsibility on behalf of the cities together with Samtrans. And our hope with that is that that minimizes the amount of funding that the cities individually would need to contribute to this. The other part of that is when we're looking at funding at the state and the federal level, we can't have every city competing against each other for the same corridor on the same funding cycles on the same projects, when we could be coordinating and combining those and making even stronger applications for those. And so that's one of the ways that, along with our partners at Caltrans and with Samtrans, that we're hoping to address kind of early on in this effort is how we get those cohesions across county or city borders. Really looking forward to working with you all and hearing for your feedback tonight. I'll pass it over to Jake.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Jake Buffenbarger, Jacob. I'm the System Planning Branch Chief for Marin, San Francisco, and San Mateo counties at Caltrans Bay Area. I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of information about how Caltrans is working together with our partners on this. First of all, Caltrans, besides being the owner-operator of State Route 82 or El Camino Real, we're required to engage in long-range corridor planning for all the facilities that we own and operate. And like a lot of things at Caltrans in the last 5 to 10 years, that's radically changed. Now our most robust long-range planning document is called the Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan, or CMCP. And essentially, this document explores the existing and future conditions of a facility and recommends projects to improve it. This document tackles a wide range of issues and examines all modes of travel. And on a corridor like this, we really want to get into transit and active transportation. While District 4 has completed many CMCPs for traditional freeway facilities, this is our first CMCP for what we call a conventional highway, and one that runs through so many jurisdictions as a main street. Because of that critical nature and unique feature of El Camino Real, we're adjusting our standard operating procedure for the CMCP. And we understand that on a corridor like El Camino, it takes extensive partnerships with regional and local stakeholders. And we are extremely pleased to partner with Samtrans and the TA and all of the cities along the peninsula and CCAG for the ongoing GBI efforts and our CMCP. We plan to directly incorporate both the vision from the GBI and the projects determined in the action plan into the CMCP. And we also plan to use the GBI stakeholder framework that they've created and the public outreach framework that they've created as the backbone of our engagement strategy, because there has been so much work done from local cities along El Camino in planning. We really want to use that as a backbone as we create our own comprehensive multimodal corridor plan. And we're also doing one for Santa Clara too. So we have the North for CMCP North for San Mateo County, and then Santa Clara County, the CMCP South. And I'm leading both of those efforts and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
This is where we turn it all to you. Sorry if you couldn't hear me. And ask you a couple questions in terms of, whether we've, met our mark, or if you have specific ideas for promise statements and goals that matter to you, and also how we can best work together to advance the GBI vision. And overall, just interested to hear if you are, as you know, Menlo Park is supportive of the GBI process as we've described it. And I can, if people want to talk about the problem statements and goals, I can go back to that, or Katrine can go back to that slide. And also happy to answer just general questions at this point.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions from the commission before I take public comment? Okay, no clarifying questions. So Katrine, could you please call for public comment on this item?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card from the back table and bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Katrina, I think I may be missing a page.
You can discuss, you can give
Okay.
feedback. Yeah.
So would the commission like to discuss this item? Any comments from the commission? The online copy that I have. I do have one, yeah.
I can answer. Thank you very much for. Thank you very much for all being here. I really appreciate it, your time and what you're working on, which is incredibly important and really complex. I was really struck by your comments around trying to strike that balance between honoring the work that's been going on in the different municipalities and their style of doing things and their priorities, and also creating a corridor, right? Creating a unified corridor. So I think that's really hard from a planning perspective, and I appreciate all that you're doing. I think I just want to answer specifically, what goals do you have? A couple of years ago, we had a commission meeting where some of the city staff was identifying the different intersections of some of major Menlo Park streets that intersect with El Camino. And during the presentation, there was an acknowledgement that El Camino is one of our high crash corridors, and a lot of those crashes take places, or collisions with peds and bikes, et cetera, take place at the intersection. And so we had a lengthy discussion about where it crosses Ravenswood and Oak Grove and Valpo and all that, and kind of what have been the collisions and what could we do, on each one to maybe make it safer. And I guess that's one thing I would say in terms of a goal, is it seems that when we talk to, bicyclists and pedestrians, when we sort of look at the crash data, et cetera, it just continues to have those thorny issues around the intersections. And I know what we ended up doing as a result of that meeting was the city applied for a grant, and we've added a crosswalk to the intersection, at Menlo, and right here at Menlo at El Camino, where the pizza place is, and the and where the Caltrain crossing is close by. But you kind of yearn for the thought of like, when do we do all 4 intersections at once? And I know it's really hard to get grants and all that kind of thing, but it does seem like some of the problems were endemic to not necessarily preparing or designing those intersections to support to intersect with such a busy road now. So I guess what I'm saying is focus on the intersections, at least in Menlo Park. I think there's some data supporting that those are could use some improvements, safety improvements. And also, wouldn't it be great if there could be like a look across all of them? I know, again, hard for funding, but I'm sure there's some solutions that we could replicate across several. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I really, I liked it. I liked the layout of like all the different cities and what kind of projects are going on. And it does sort of help bring it all together. Like, I like the Grand Boulevard idea. I think it's fitting for El Camino, really. I love the idea of protected bike lanes. Like, for quite a distance. And I think one of the things that I've noticed just having watched infrastructure improvements here and in lots of other places is that like when you put those things in, like people show up to use them in all the ways that you imagined. And so I totally encourage you to keep going forward. And yeah, thanks. Good job.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of comments and questions. The Atherton transportation team came to the commission a couple of months ago talking about their plans for the stretch. My recollection of their timeline was that it was quite a bit more aggressive than this. And I guess I'm very supportive of this plan. And I'm very appreciative of the work that you're doing, but I wonder if there's some way to move the timeline forward a little bit. And the question that I have, I guess, is also, it's related to the Palo Alto and Mountain View projects, which I understand were tied to the repaving of El Camino, and that allowed them to accelerate their work with support from Palo Alto City Council. My recollection was that Menlo Park's repaving schedule was far behind their section, but I don't know if you've been on the Palo Alto protected bike lanes recently, but they end dramatically at Sand Hill Road. And you go from some of the safest infrastructure that we now have in the peninsula to the worst and least safe. And I've now seen some cyclists kind of crossing over that. So I wonder if there's some mechanism to accelerate this process, even as a quick build without the permanent bollards that they've installed, in their section, just to test out some of these ideas without having to wait the 8 years that you discussed and the $750 million, and then gather data along the way that would allow us to inform the process, not just through the surveys and the public comments, but actual empirical experience from people who are using the corridor in this more inclusive way.
I can take the first part of that, and I might pass to Jake for the second part, because it's a little bit of a multi-pronged question. So the Transportation Authority were the primary funders for the Atherton study, so we've been very involved with that. And so that plan, kind of the idea how that plan intersects with GBI too, is how that we won't fund anything that goes against that plan, and that anything we do in the near term, they could apply to us for our highway program, and it wouldn't. You could apply for things. They're looking in this highway program call for projects, which are due Friday, to apply for like a signal improvement. And the signal would have to be designed so that it wouldn't prevent the long-term vision improvements from the main corridor project that Cassie is forwarding. So those types of things are eligible for us. And we are kind of trying to figure out collectively how we strike that balance. And then I think there's kind of the question how that all relates to the repaving. I think in the northern part of the county, we're coming up against this, but Colma, actually, the state highway operation, I'm going to butcher it, the SHOP projects, the main repaving projects for Caltrans, how we're getting the local preferred alternatives and getting through the process and getting that to match up with the timeline of those Caltrans processes. Because Caltrans is stuck with the California Transportation Commission's deadlines to actually use that funding, or else we lose that in the county. And so we're trying to, even on top of what we've shown today, even try to mesh all of those together and get caught up as fast as we can, so we know what all the local priorities are. I don't know, Jake, Kathy, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I would just add that, for our repaving projects, which is generally under the SHOP program, which is a state highway operations and protections program, we try to incorporate what local cities want. If they want to add, simple things like green bike lanes, that kind of thing, we try to incorporate where we can, but we're very limited in timeline and schedule and funding. Even if the city comes to us and says, hey, we'll help out with some funding, the timeline can still be pretty impacted, and we have to work really hard to meet those deadlines for CTC approval and funding. What I will say is that I'm really encouraged by this kind of more long-range planning process, because that will allow us to build that into, future projects. And if we do, for a better word, attack this issue as a corridor-wide problem and corridor-wide project, that gives us a lot more design leeway for potential improvements we could include, where it's really hard to put things in an existing paving project a lot of times.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add one more thing, which is the Atherton project is actually going to be incorporated in this Caltrans process that we talked about. So I think that they're looking to do is to expedite some improvements along specific intersections that are very dangerous. And they're applying for funds that Patrick talked about for that portion, but the broader streetscape improvements, the two alternatives that they advanced, would be implemented as a part of this broader effort. And just in terms of the shop work, one thing we are working on is working very closely with Caltrans to make sure that if there are opportunities to kind of do small scale improvements that are sooner in upcoming shop projects. So we have one in South San Francisco and one in San Mateo and one in Daly City and I think San Bruno and Millbrae as well. And so we have our bus stop improvement plan where we have proposed along the entire county how to have more transit amenities. And so those types of plans we're providing to Caltrans when we are reviewing the designs for these repaving projects. But as Jake said, they're often very limited in scope and difficult. Their main purpose is to do the repaving. And so it's not really a model for funding the entire corridor. But that's a great question.
And I'll also add really quickly for the Palo Alto project that you specifically mentioned, that's a reactive safety project, which is a kind of a special kind of Caltrans project that are traffic safety. They do a traffic safety monitoring program. And if they get enough, data points that suggest we need specific countermeasures for that, that kind of gets on a different accelerated Caltrans path for reactive safety projects that then has an even stricter funding and timeline restrictions. So,
Can I add?
Just a quick follow-up. What is the repaving schedule for these different stretches of El Camino in San Mateo County?
I would have to get back to you on that for the specific timeline. There's a lot.
I think it might be helpful to see it as part of the presentation, just to know could we piece this together? I think I support the idea of the long-term vision as well. I think it's great. We should know where we're going. We should have an idea of what it could look like in the future to inspire people to join in this process. But I also think waiting 8 years it's kind of demoralizing. And if we can piece it together for many small projects and it gradually becomes something that gets better and better over time, you'll get more involvement and more engagement from the community, and there'll be some positive momentum associated with it. So I wouldn't discount those repaving projects. I agree that they're kind of too small, but if enough of them add up and people start using more of these stretches and they see the momentum, I think it could build. So I think, as you present this on this sheet, it might be helpful just to say yes, it's going to be many years, but we can do these parts of it incrementally over time and show that improvement.
Yeah, and another thing just to note is now that once we have this Grand Boulevard Initiative action plan, that will be the blueprint of the types of projects that we can do in the future. So we're doing this, long range plan that's moving through the Caltrans process. However, there may be opportunities for cities to take cut sheets out of the plan and apply for some grants for some intersection design improvements. So I think that's also a great thing is that we're working together to create this broader plan, and then that can be utilized hopefully by cities.
I just want to follow up on that. I'm so glad you said that because as you were talking, I was thinking it seems like the unlock is in the interim, if there is a safety issue and compelling need that ultimately would serve the Grand Boulevard Initiative, but isn't asking to install all the infrastructure, which I know is really hard to rip up and reinstall. Can cities pitch that? A good example is can we just stripe a bike lane so people know it's there, rather than having bikers feel like they're kind of in a war zone or whatnot.
I can take that one. Yes, we are open to those things as long as they don't preempt the long-term vision for those, and that we're not, like you're saying, ripping out concrete work and things like that are millions of dollars. And I think to Caltrans's credit for some of these shop projects we're talking about, they are looking at those kind of more simple striping kind of improvements that can be integrated in the near term as well. So it just helps us set that vision that Caltrans can incorporate into their plans.
I don't know how far you're going to take the Grand Boulevard Initiative branding. But I did want to say that I respond really positively to that because I think people need to kind of see El Camino as a very important and historical and cultural thoroughfare that ties us all together. And I think it's one of the few times where like branding actually is kind of a profound act, you know, because you're saying, hey, we're all part of this. Let's make it better up and down the corridor and everything. And it's not 101, you know, you're going to benefit from that, right? It goes through neighborhoods, you know, it's something that everyone has contact with. So I would encourage you to, I mean, maybe that's one way in which you do, while you're giving all these municipalities their own sort of stamp on it, you know, there is like a consistent branding throughout the corridor. I think it'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. This was really great presentation, great initiatives, and yeah, the work collectively getting everybody together between one vision is pretty amazing to even try. So thank you for that. I was going to ask more particular, I'm always more specific type of person. So is there like specific visions like remove all parking, don't have bus stops and bike lanes? Is there any thought on flooding or climate involved? Lighting on the street? And then since Samtrans, you're here, the buses, like the accordion buses, removing them, things like that, not just the actual infrastructure, but the users also as well. So thank you.
Yeah, you can go back to that slide that says streetscape changes. So this just provides a little bit of an overview of the types of things that we're considering along the corridor. I would say that it's not a one size fits all model. You know, the corridor is really, every block is pretty unique on El Camino. And so it's hard to come up with, you know, broad stroke approach to the whole corridor. And there are a lot of, you know, local businesses in some sections that, you know, need parking, or there's sections that are higher ridership bus service. And there's sections where, you know, bicyclists really need that connection. So I think there's different needs in different segments, but ultimately what we're proposing, as Patrick talked about, is this menu of options that cities can choose from in their design alternatives. However, we don't want things that actively go against these safety and mobility goals. So we would consider, you know, all of these approaches that are on this slide. And this is still, you know, being you know, more refined through this design process that I talked about with Caltrans. But at this stage, we basically are proposing and have worked with cities to propose these broad set of design concepts. And then from there, we'll be refining those in the coming years.
I just had one follow-up. Would there be support for off-street parking to support active transportation? Because parking just takes up so much space. Could that be talked about and thought about? Yeah.
I think something like that would be more on the side of a local jurisdiction to resolve. But I don't know yeah, okay.
We're not necessarily going to be looking at it as part of the overall plan, to my knowledge, but our funding from our Transportation Demand Management Program can pay for cities to look at parking management plans for stuff like that. So if that's an interest for the corridor, that's something the city could explore. If one of the options is to remove parking, then the question you're asking is, well, where do we replace that parking if that's your prerogative of what you want to look at instead of just removing it too? So there are still ways, and as we mentioned, this is a longer process, that you could take a look at that on where that would happen as well.
And I'll just add the caveat that generally our best practice for parking removal is to get a city council resolution for each city. So that can be tough depending on where you are.
I just have a couple of questions that, well, first of all, this is a great idea, and I think that it's going to really improve the usage of El Camino, which is, as mentioned a few times, just kind of this heart of all of the neighborhoods in a lot of these cities. So really exciting. But one question I have, since we're basically at the edge of San Mateo County, and we kind of, I think a lot as was mentioned before, that the transition from Santa Clara County, I just want to double check about the coordination between those two, because I think it's super important that sort of University Avenue to Sand Hill Avenue transition is sometimes quite difficult and impossible on a bike right now.
Yes, I should have mentioned that we talk about this as San Mateo County, but we did also include Palo Alto just because of the Route ECR actually ends at the Palo Alto Transit Center. So we wanted to include it to be complete. And we recognize that there's, a good, a lot of interface with Menlo Park. So we're including Palo Alto in the action plan, and we are working closely with them. One of the things that we are going to be working on in the coming years is just once cities have their preferred alternative, then we have to kind of work to reconcile them to make sure that with the Palo Alto example, that there isn't a beautiful facility that just drops off and then you have nothing. So trying to, as much as possible, kind of make sure that those regional facilities are available.
Thank you. Okay, and just going back a little bit to this timeline question, I think we've kind of talked about integrating existing projects into sort of forward-looking plans that are compatible with this work, but is the overall plan to be sort of spot projects which build up into some kind of larger cohesive thing, or would there be like a planned phasing of the project, or is it okay?
Cassie and I talk about this intricately all the time. So great question. I think it depends, as we were just talking about, of what the different alternatives are. But I think our overarching goal is to try to knit together a few cities at a time. So that way we're not competing for funding at every city level. There were, I think, 13 or 14 cities up and down the corridor. So that would be a lot of grants. So a little bit more for context too, if we take that $750 million, the Transportation Authority, we can only fund up to half of that. And so we're going to need to get an incredible amount of money to fund the corridor. And I think doing the spot treatments isn't always going to work. And so we're trying to figure out how we can best leverage it as a transit project, as a pedestrian and bicycle project, and how we can take advantage of all the different grant sources that are out there. And kind of the better and bigger we make a project, the better we compete for funding at the regional and the state level. And so it may sound intuitive. I would say if you're applying to the Transportation Authority for funding, small spot projects are perfect. Like those are the types of things. When we get beyond that to some of the regional programs, it gets a little bit more difficult if we're taking a look at too small of a project. And so that's where we're looking to get those kind of bigger gains from those economies of scale. And so we will be trying to figure out, after we get everyone's kind of preferred alternative at the local level and finish the action plan, how we would phase all of that and get it funded. Because there's also the fact that we don't take in enough money per year to be able to fund everything all at once. And so I think there's how we break that up and phase that in order to get all of that funded. So that's all still to be determined as we come out of this. And I'm sure we will be back many times to talk about that over the years.
Yeah, it's just, it kind of makes sense, I think, to build momentum, right? Because I think so many people really do want to see these improvements on El Camino, and the safety improvements and the bike and pedestrian improvements and the flooding improvements and all of these things. And to do a like fully phased project kind of feels like it might take momentum away from one part of the corridor. But yeah, so that's to be determined, I suppose. But okay, Commissioner Bailey.
I think everybody's pretty much hit the questions and comments that I've had, except I am interested. I was just clicking through the slide deck. At some point, one of the partner groups is business groups. And I am kind of curious as to what, especially after following Palo Alto for the past couple of years, what has the maybe initial reaction been?
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit, and then also Charles E. from our government affairs group can speak to it also. So we have groups like SAMCETA. Do you remember the full list of business groups?
Some of the different. Yeah, so we invited our business groups or chambers groups to participate in just providing feedback on what to keep in mind when we're thinking about if we're going to be potentially making these changes. Sometimes what happens is that we might not always get enough feedback from the business community, so we wanted to hear that early on in and keeping them involved. So they've been pretty involved in providing feedback and just understanding that there is sometimes issues with parking and to just keep that in mind when we're looking at the different, balancing the different priorities.
Has parking been coming across as the primary concern, I imagine?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Because everyone else has already, I think, covered my questions and concerns, I will just end with a compliment. I took my 8-year-old biking in Palo Alto on El Camino, which is something I would never have imagined doing in a million years. And it was a lovely experience. And I look forward to our community having that as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other further comments from the commission? Thank you. This was a great presentation. Thank you. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is item E3, recommend to City Council to approve the updated Complete Streets Commission 2025-2026 work plan. The Complete Streets Commission 2025 to 2026 work plan will now be brought to the City Council on September 30th. Tonight, we have the opportunity to discuss modifications to the work plan, hear from city staff about their suggested edits, and approve an updated Complete Streets Commission 2025-2026 work plan. Tonight, we are joined by Azalea Mitch, Public Works Director, Joanna Chan, Transportation Manager, Kyle Prada, Assistant Community Development Director, and Christiane Choi, Senior Transportation Planner, all here available tonight to provide clarification on departmental processes. Are there any clarifying questions from the commission before I take public comment? Do we have to, should we have the work plan up?
I could pull it up. Should we call for public comment and then go into the discussion?
Perhaps,
Maybe if we put it up.
yeah, let's put if we put the work plan up first so that the commission can have a minute just to run clarifying questions by.
I have 3 versions of the work plan I could pull up for you.
Okay.
What are you looking for to see in terms of versions of the track changes? Do you want us to dive into where you left off or where I can give you staff edits kind of to jump forward of
I
kind
think let's start with staff edits to the previously approved plan.
make this a little wider. So I think for you guys to understand my convention here, if it's highlighted in yellow, it's something that we should discuss. If it's not highlighted in yellow, those are edits that staff accepts, like no problem with some of these other minor edits.
Scroll down.
Yeah, can we, so
Gonna-
so there are 4 points, that
4 main subject
main-
areas. Yeah.
Are there any clarifying questions from the commission on these? We can have discussion about them after public comment, but
I have a clarifying question, sorry, about this document. Oh, I see. It might be confusing, so I guess I'll just try to clarify. I hope this is correct. Katrine, correct me if I'm wrong, but bullet 3, The yellow highlighted language that's not crossed out is what the staff wants to say for 3. The yellow highlighted language right above that, that is crossed out, is what we put into the work plan in the August meeting.
Correct.
I think very minor, I think 5.4 bullet point 1 is evaluate metrics. Or I could be wrong. Is it just that one metric, VMT?
Yeah, VMT.
Huh, okay. And so this bottom one is, I don't see that on the last thing I saw, this participate in an ad hoc committee.
This is the new direction that was developed in the meantime.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have not seen that before.
That is new.
To call out to the commission. So the last one, participate in the Complete Streets, comprised of both commissioners from Complete Streets and environmental quality commissioners. The clarifying answer, if you were to say, what's that doing in here? Is that some of us from Complete Streets and EQC had some conversations about combining efforts.
Sally,
on
if you could move your microphone, it's catching like half your words.
For about a year now, some people from EQC had reached out to some folks on Complete Streets and said, can we work together more closely on hitting the goals of this climate action strategy number 4 action list? Because the EQC had responsibility for some, we had responsibility for some, and they wanted more collaboration. And so this was the proposal that came out of those conversations that would provide a process for ongoing collaboration. And we haven't seen that before.
It's also the same language that the EQC has in their work plan. So the two are matching and in sync.
Okay, I think if there are no clarifying questions, we can call for public comment.
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card from the back table and bring it to the clerk's desk. Please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. So now I will open this up for commission discussion. Maybe we can start with number 1, which is the TMP. So the original language included any possible improvements and additions to the TMP, which staff recommends removing.
Katrine, can you speak to why that portion is not what we want?
I'll defer to Azalea. She's got a great explanation.
Sounds brilliant.
Hi,
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Azalea Mitch, Public Works Director. So we embarked on the Transportation Master Plan and the Vision Zero Action Plan. The Vision Zero Action Plan was adopted a little bit over a year ago. The Transportation Master Plan was a 2-year effort. It involved a lot of public outreach, a lot of analysis, and these are master plans that have a long life. We do have a roadmap in terms of implementation, which relies on funding and your input as we bring the capital improvement plan to you all for feedback. So at this moment, we wouldn't advise for us to open that process again. And it would really depend on council's direction because of the time and the funding associated with it. We believe that these documents are were exhaustive in terms of the outreach. They have great recommendations and we're in the process of implementing them. So in terms of adding to the master plans, they would really require a lot of effort and funding, and it would be a project that City Council would have to approve.
So essentially what I'm hearing is the TMP is not a living document. It is done. Okay, thank you.
I can provide, the August meeting was a long meeting and it seems like a long time ago. So I'm just going to provide my perspective on why this was proposed in case anyone doesn't remember the course of the conversation. So I had said that in 1A, annually evaluate and propose transportation projects from the TMP to include in the capital improvement plan. I had said that I was concerned that if the projects we were to ask City Council to include in the capital plan were limited to projects in the TMP, then we would miss the opportunity to jump up to the microphone during the budget meeting with City Council and say, hey, we've had 2 major e-bike collisions in the past week on this one intersection, and we really want funding to be included in the capital plan for e-bike safety or public outreach or whatever it might be. And I was concerned that we wouldn't have the opportunity to react to something like that if we were restricted to only proposing projects that were existing in the TMP. That was what my input. In the course of the conversation, the solution that was proposed was to add this and possible improvements and additions to the TMP to the top sentence. I understand why that's very broad and maybe a bit, isn't a narrow a solution for the concern that was raised. So my proposal here would be to accept the deletion of and any possible improvements and additions per Azalea's comment, but I think it would be helpful if we just said something like giving us the opportunity to comment on something or to propose funding for something that was in the TMP. Annually evaluate and propose transportation projects from the TMP, and then we could put in parentheses or pending approval for inclusion in the TMP. That means that, in the event that we really want to go in front of the council and say, hey, we know you're considering putting money in the capital plan, but there's a safety risk here, and we would just like to ask for funding. Maybe it's better police enforcement of e-bikes or something. We'd like to propose that, and then, of course, we'll put a proposal, we'll ask you to include that in the TMP. So just giving us the opportunity to do that if we wanted to. That was my thought, that one way to approach that. And I don't know how the staff feels about that, but I think that would allow us to bring up safety concerns that hadn't necessarily gone through that process, but could, given maybe public reaction and preventability and et cetera, be brought to the council's attention for funding at that time.
I have a question about that, which is inclusion in the TMP a necessary step for getting that kind of funding and attention? I understand that it prioritizes projects, but if we were to see we've made some change to this intersection, and then the next intersection down all of a sudden has become an acute need that isn't reflected in the state of the TMP as of 5 years ago or whenever it was made, that we bring to council's attention, how would that be handled?
Right. So I think in a number of ways, the TMP prioritizes projects, but we do take the opportunity as improvements come up to see what can be done based on the funding that's available. So it doesn't mean that we focus our energy on getting the top, priority 1 project implemented and then leave the rest for whatever timeline. So we take an opportunity approach. If something were to happen, I will say that the Vision Zero action plan does take the safe systems approach, where we're looking at our streets in a much more comprehensive way. So if there are programmatic changes, not necessarily CIP, but programmatic changes that fall under the Vision Zero safe systems approach umbrella that we can implement. If it's something that then we are dramatically changing our roadways, or we maybe make operational changes that have impacts, then they still fall under our overall Vision Zero policy, right? So it doesn't preclude us from bringing an urgent issue to our city council. And I think we have a path forward without having to completely redo our TMP. So I think in terms of the language that is proposed, we have every year we go through our 5-year CIP project. And there was a question on Alpine, for example. We have that in our CIP. But projects take time to implement. And so it's a matter of us sharing with you every year what we can do and the funding that we do have. If there's something that comes up that changes our priorities, I think we have the path to discuss them. I don't think that we necessarily have to go and do a comprehensive changes to the TMP. So I think through our CIP and through our programs, like Slow Streets, for example, which will be returning to you all later this year, we have the ability to continue to have that dialogue on priorities. So we would recommend, in terms of, this is a work plan that you all develop, review, adopt every year. And so year windows are very short when we're looking at 5 years, 10 years out. And so this is flexible enough for us to talk about maybe shifting some of our projects. So I would recommend support for the language. Otherwise, I always think about the future commissioners or future staff in terms of what the words mean, and coming back to you all with then us recommending to City Council support for updating the TMP. That's just a huge effort. But I think there's flexibility in the work plan language as it's proposed for us to continue to have the annual dialogue on projects and programs.
Sorry, so what if we said annually evaluate and propose transportation projects from the TMP and to address urgent needs to include in the 5-year capital improvement plan? Because you're saying that there is latitude in the way the city operates to address urgent needs that aren't in the TMP if something comes up. But if we really are serious and it's a very urgent need, I would think we would want to include it in the 5-year capital plan so we're sure that there's funding for it.
I think that's very reasonable. I mean, like I said, the TMP it's a multi-year effort with a lot of funding. And if we are seeing problems in our roadway system that become urgent, we shouldn't wait 2 or 3 years to update a plan.
Okay, thank you.
So if we,
Okay.
question is
Does
to
my
address
red
urgent
text
needs?
here reflect?
Can I? There. I think, I mean, I sort of, I understand some of it. I do, I do feel like that, I understand the point about the TMP having been, like, I think it includes like all the streets in Menlo Park. And so even if there are urgent needs, my hunch is it's probably a thing that is identified in the TMP because we only have, unless we build new, like when we build new intersections that don't like that. So I guess that would be the question, like when something like Parkline or these places come on that actually create streets inside of a neighborhood, like none of those things are on the TMP. And so like, what is the procedure for something like that? Like when my neighborhood got built, like those intersections didn't exist,
Yes, indeed. So those would be updating the circulation element in the general plan, which we would return to you all to assess. And that would also require, an update to the TMP. So those are major examples that would go through a process of updating our documents.
There's layers.
Okay. Are there any further comments on number 1, or this is not an official vote. I think we should have a motion to accept all of the things at the end, but I'm just going to assess if we can leave number 1 as is for now and move forward. Okay. Number 2, the highlighted line, which staff recommends removing, is to provide feedback on the implementation of AB 413 daylighting law. And could you explain the rationale for that?
Sure. So this is state law, and we've been working very closely with our maintenance team to assess a cost-effective way to address our intersections. We have many intersections in the city, and so we've been working with them to assess capacity, to strategize on the Safe Routes to School corridor to figure out what treatment they can do that in that we can do it in a timely manner. We are delayed because of we've been repairing sidewalks, so our team is small, and so we've been delayed on this effort. What I think we can do is at the end of this year, bring to you all an update on our projects, which would also include these efforts that, one, we are required to meet law, but they fall in our more on our maintenance bucket. And so we can definitely bring back to you what we have done in terms of department-wide, our report department-wide in terms of our capital projects, operational programs, and also maintenance that touches upon the transportation improvements.
We talked about this just to give some color, we talked this with, so we talked about this with staff at the agenda setting meeting, and I got the impression that they're working really hard with the other members of staff across the different departments to implement the law and the law specific about how it needs to be implemented. And Azalea, I thought was great to offer that the staff will come back and provide us updates. And in that fashion, in that form, we can provide feedback.
Thank you. Okay. Comments on number 2? Okay, let's move on. Number 3. So we had originally had a line for provide input to the city council on major land use and development projects as it relates to transportation before it goes to planning commission. And that was recommended to be amended to provide input and recommendations to the city council on the city's major redevelopment projects. Development, not redevelopment. Projects when the project's impact on public streets, safety, and transportation accessibility requires an amendment to the city's general plan circulation element or a specific plan, chapter F, parentheses, circulation. Would staff like to comment on this one?
Sure, absolutely. This is a change that we brought other staff on, and Kyle Parada is available virtually. He is our Assistant Deputy Community Development Director, and we work collectively on projects that come through on the planning side. And we have many aspects in engineering that we review and comment. One of the critical ones, obviously, is transportation. What I do share is that our scope as staff is very limited on the types of comments that we can make on these projects. Timelines, some projects, depending on their type, have a process and limited timelines. And so we're struggling here in terms of offering a way to give you all a definition of what types of projects should come back to the CSE, while also being mindful of the expectations that we have as staff in terms of how limited we are with our own comments, and what the commissioners, what you all may want to see and comment on these projects. So we thought it would be helpful for Kyle to offer an overview of the types of projects that, like housing projects, that the process is so different, can't come to the CSE, what types of projects could, and we're proposing those that deviate from adopted plans, and to better explain how the review process works and why we're proposing this language. Can you promote Kyle?
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. Kyle Parada, Assistant Community Development Director. I think, thanks, Azalea, I think that was my cue to hop on. So if it is okay with the commission, I can just kind of add to that unless there's questions for me specifically before I start.
No, go ahead.
Okay, great, thanks. So maybe first off, just kind of the overall development review process. It does depend on the project, but the Planning Commission can be the final decision-making body for a number of discretionary projects. So just to kind of provide a little bit more context, the Planning Commission is a commission that's required or organized by the state of California, so state statute. It's in the legislative law. And the Planning Commission is charged then with reviewing development projects and actually acting on them. So not all projects the Planning Commission reviews go to the City Council. A number of them, like use permits, architectural controls, those get reviewed and can be acted upon by the Planning Commission. So in terms of, the Planning Commission's role is to take the development project, review it, and act on it. Staff's role in the Community Development Department is to review a development project for consistency with the city's general plan, zoning ordinance, and other related governing documents, policies, programs, and then forward that information to the Planning Commission, who does consider the general plan, the zoning ordinance, and other city planning documents in that decision-making process. They are the recommending body, though, for other projects that require council action that are legislative in nature, such as general plan amendments. And so to provide a little more context for staff's recommendation on the text change for the work plan is to identify the Complete Streets Commission reviewing development projects that deviate, as Ms. Mitch said, from the city's circulation element general plan or the circulation chapter of the specific plan. And as part of that, that would be providing that review and recommendation as an advisory body to the council, not to the Planning Commission. So it's also a dynamic there to recognize that the Planning Commission is as charged by the state to act on projects. And the Complete Streets Commission is a advisory body of the council. So not all development projects go to the council. So by recommending the circulation element amendments or the circulation chapter of the specific plan, that kind of comports with that recommendation from the Planning Commission to the council. So hopefully that provides a little more context for the Planning Commission's role in the development review process. And I can answer any questions.
I have a quick question. What determines when a development is not, like, the Planning Commission is insufficient for a development?
Yeah, there's a couple factors there. So typically it's legislative projects. So those are like general plan amendments to the city's zoning ordinance. There are a couple other unique permits, like a development agreement or a conditional development permit that are in the city's municipal code as requiring council review. Another one is major subdivisions, but the majority of the development projects that the planning team reviews and takes forward to the Planning Commission stop at the Planning Commission.
So, Kyle, if there is a development agreement with a project, doesn't that initiate a city council subcommittee?
The development agreement does. That's correct. Yeah, development agreements are negotiated between the city negotiating team and applicant negotiating team. And the city does appoint a subcommittee of the city council. City council appoints a subcommittee, I should say, to be part of that discussion.
So would it be fair to say that all the really big developments that have been well advertised and we're all aware of that have a major impact on the city in terms of obviously land use, traffic impact, jobs, housing, et cetera, maybe just leave out housing for now, have development agreements with the city council? I mean, they have development agreements with the city?
I don't think that's quite correct. There's very few development agreements.
Okay.
A lot of projects go through Planning Commission without any development agreements. That is really a separate voluntary process that an applicant may request from the city for vested rights for a longer term of the project. So a recent example for a DA, putting Parkland aside because that's still in the legislative process, and I don't want to talk about specific projects that are going through a discretionary process right now, but the Willow Village project had a development agreement. But there are very few development agreements. That's not typical for a development project. Even a large scale project doesn't typically get a development agreement. It's more of a long-term multi-phase project where the applicant's looking for vested rights for a long term in exchange for providing community or public benefits to the city or to the community more broadly.
Okay, thank you. And then What about EIRs? What kinds of projects require those?
Well, it depends, and state law is ever evolving on this. The legislature is continually modifying the California Environmental Quality Act and the applicability and expanding exemptions for that. So my answer today may not be the same tomorrow, but certainly a lot of development projects that require EIRs still do. Well, let me back up. Sorry. It depends. What the city does is we evaluate a project against the city's planning documents and the previous environmental reviews that have done for those and determine whether there could be a potential environmental effect. And then we go through a process. We either initiate an EIR or we start with an initial study, which is the first step to determine if an EIR is necessary, and if so, a focused EIR. So it depends. And I probably can't give a great answer, but I mean, a number of development projects are being reviewed right now that have environmental impact reports. The Planning Commission can be the final decision-making body and certify an EIR as part of a development project application.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Does an EIR contain traffic impacts as part of the impact, or is it just on the physical environment?
No, it's a good question. State law requires for the California Environmental Quality Act, VMT, vehicles miles traveled, to be evaluated in the environmental impact report for whether there's a significant impact. The city does have a local policy, though, to require a transportation impact analysis that includes level of service or congestion. Pre the CEQA change from state law, that was the threshold. It was traffic, it was congestion. That is no longer the case under CEQA. The city does have a policy to prepare a separate level of service analysis, though, with these projects. And through that, there are recommended improvement measures. They're not mitigation measures. I want to just be clear about that. Improvement measures for consideration by decision makers. And the Planning Commission, if it's a project that stops at their purview, can review and act on those offsite improvements, which act much like mitigations pre-VMT under CEQA. So that's the typical signal changes, roadway widening, alterations to intersections for flow. Roadway widening is probably not a good example because that can induce VMT. So we typically can't or won't recommend that improvement measure gets incorporated, because that can have a negative effect on the environmental analysis. So that kind of makes sense what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question about that. When, what sort of roadway projects would come to us in that sense, right? If they're, okay, he just said probably not road widening would be included, but if they were to propose road widening, is that a project that would come to the Complete Streets Commission?
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Kyle.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a change to our roadway infrastructure that would lead to circulation changes.
Okay, so if there are like lane changes or anything, adding turn lanes or road parking, adding or removing road parking, those sorts of things would come to the Complete Streets Commission?
Well, so we can make operational changes, right, in terms of changing restriping that don't impact the roadway. If we're talking about widening, acquiring land or extending the right of way, then those are changes that would be brought back, not necessarily if we're changing the striping configuration and adding turn lanes. Unless it's, and maybe this is where Christian Choi is our senior transportation engineer. Maybe Christian, you can provide examples of operational improvements that we've contemplated that don't necessarily are, drastically changing, because those get very operational, right, in terms of cycle times. And those are typically not things that we would be bringing back. Perhaps we could update and say, efficiency improvements are being contemplated, but not necessarily would we be seeking approval for highly technical traffic signal modifications. But perhaps Christiane can provide an example of something that, would be brought back to the commission.
Hi, yes, good evening, Commissioners, Christiane Choi, Senior Transportation Engineer. And let's see, so I think one thing we came back to, or we came to the commission last was for the Willow Village project, where we were changing something that was in the circulation element. We had identified kind of a paseo through their property, and they wanted to kind of redirect where that paseo was going to go, and they kind of changed the circulation within their site there. And so we brought that to the commission, and who reviewed kind of like the new public street that they were adding as well. And so so that was kind of a case where we've brought the project to the commission. But other projects where we have recommended improvement, potentially adding a new traffic signal to improve operations, and potentially queuing along a street we haven't necessarily brought to the commission before. That usually, based on kind of our level of service analysis, indicates that we need maybe another signal to kind of balance the roadway volumes accessing the site. Then we kind of evaluate that and then bring that forward as part of recommended improvements for approval to the Planning Commission.
I'm sorry, but Kyle and Christiane, I think what we were asking was if the carve out, this language is saying that the commission would not be providing input and recommendations on the city's major development projects unless, right? The project's impact on public street safety and transportation accessibility is not consistent with the city's master plans and development requirements, such as the city's general plan circulation element. So, I mean, very specifically, can you all name 10 things that a development could do related to public street safety and transportation that are not consistent with the city's master plans and the city's general plan circulation element? The reason I'm asking for specifics is you're asking us to approve language, and honestly, I personally don't know what it means, because I don't know what it means to be inconsistent with the city's master plans and general plan circulation element. So I don't know what would initiate you to include us in the review. What circumstances?
Yeah, so I mean, I gave you the one example for Willow Village, but then there could be something where they conflict with the city's plan for bicycle facilities on a certain street, and they want to move it to a different location, or their development would preclude it being added to a certain street or something like that. Then that could be something we would want to bring to the commission.
Okay, I guess a question I have is kind of in how likely is it that a development is going to have these kinds of deviations from the master plans? Like, as in Willow Village is an example that you guys have gotten, but that was a while ago. But I guess my question is like, are these right? I understand these developments do try to like fit within the city plans. So yeah, how likely are they to deviate?
Yeah, I can start. We want projects to comply and be consistent with these master plans. They are these, the general plan, the circulation element, our TMP, our Vision Zero. I think many of you have been part of those efforts, and they're very meaningful. So, and they require a lot of not only financial capital, but a lot of social capital in terms of the public outreach. So we try very hard. So our job as staff, our comments really focus on these projects when we review the applications. Our comments revolve around compliance to our plans. So we want them to fit the vision and to address safety challenges. So like what the likelihood, we would hope that the likelihood would be very low because we are looking for consistency. And because these plans require a lot of time and effort and the vision set by the community and the commissions and city council. So in terms of some of the projects that have deviated, Willow Village is one example. I don't know, Kyle, if we've had others in the past.
Oh yeah, thanks. It's been a while, and I'm trying to look up information to see when the last amendment to the circulation element for a private development project was. And I cannot think of another, and I'm going to regret saying this since I've been in Menlo Park for 16 years besides Willow Village, but I will look and follow up if I need to correct myself on the record this evening. So just give me a few minutes.
So I like, as I listen to it, if I think I understand that for like these major projects that come to Menlo Park, the input of the Complete Streets Commission comes before those projects ever get here. Okay.
I would, yes, I would add that. I mean, this is why these documents are so important, because they're highly involved. The commissions are very engaged, the community, and there are guiding documents. So yes, that there is a lot of input, and our job as staff is to make sure that projects are consistent with those plans.
So I wanted to remind the commissioners that if we could please show the screen with the language again. The reason we added the sentence we did, which is provide input, this is the crossed out, thank you, provide input to the city council on major land use and development projects as it relates to transportation, is that we pulled it verbatim. We added this before it goes to the planning commission, which I think we should probably take out, but we pulled it verbatim from the city council's resolution from February of last year, which described the commission's policies, procedures, roles, and responsibilities. In the first sentence, it says the Complete Streets is approved by City Council. The Complete Streets Commission is charged primarily with advising the City Council on realizing the city's adopted goals for Complete Streets Vision Zero Climate Action Plan and provide input on major land use and development projects as it relates to transportation, period, is the first sentence. So I think I'm having an issue right now, but I don't think that means that we only see highly infrequent exception cases that don't comply with a plan. I think that means we provide input because we've been appointed by the city council to, to funnel how the residents experience the streets and what they want out of their streets and their behavior in the streets and what issues they're facing. And that's very different from staff. Staff has an extremely important role, but we have a different one. And so I do think that I appreciate staff will perform the role to review the plan and see if it complies, but I don't think that's the commission's role. I think the commission's role is to engage the public and to look at projects that would have a big impact on the public and our city in relation to transportation. And I think we should perform that role. And I honestly think, when I speak with city council members, what I hear from them is that the council just doesn't have time to focus with the depth that they need to on all these different issues. That's why they appoint the commissions. they're expecting Complete Streets to dive in and really focus on what is this project's impact on public street safety, transportation accessibility, and then to provide them recommendations. That's why they've appointed us in the roles that we have. So I personally think that the issue is really about what this word major means, provide input to the city council on major land use and development projects. Obviously, we've heard from the staff that they interpret that as meaning we would only, they would only refer things to us in this particular narrow set of circumstances. But maybe it's time to just go back to the council that wrote and approved the language and say, you've asked us as a commission to provide input on major land use projects. What is your intention which of those projects would you like us to provide input on? That would be my recommendation.
I was just going to say I'm in support of Commissioner Skoll's comments. What was added just seems to preclude our ability to effectively look at anything. If staff member has been here for 16 years and they can only think of one thing, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why are we even here? So.
Thank you. Okay. If I may add, would it be helpful to maybe pull the roles and responsibilities to look at the bullets? And I'll just say, I think all your roles are really important. We do have guiding documents that, do represent a lot of your input feedback in the communities. But I think it would be helpful to take a look at the sub-bullets on the roles and responsibilities, because our attempt is to offer further clarity on City Council's intent.
I'm sorry, are you saying that the bullet points are defining that phrase that's in yellow?
Yes, I think they note, right, continue to support the adopted plans, safe streets. We are proposing to add a little bit more definition in terms of including changes to the circulation element. But I think those bullets do, my understanding is City Council's attempt to define then the types of reviews that would come forward.
I'm not sure I agree that the City Council wrote the 6 bullets to exactly match to the statements above it. I think those are examples. I don't think they're exhaustive. But again, if there's confusion about what the City Council meant, I just think that we're too far apart to agree. At least I feel I am. And I think it would be good to take it back to the City Council.
What would it look like to take this one bullet point from the work plan back to City Council?
Sure, the staff report to the council will include all the commission work plans. And so we would be asked to present in the staff report the commission's recommendations and staff's recommendations. And then we would, as a regular item, have seek feedback from City Council then on the language to include in the work plan to clarify the direction.
And would that language only apply to, because if you're, you said something about including language in our roles and responsibilities resolution about this, circulation element. So those are two different.
No, at this point, it
changes.
would just be the work plan.
Okay, which it applies for just this year.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes.
Any thoughts from the commission on whether this is a good idea? Was this what we want to proceed with, or should we?
So essentially, we push for this language and then it goes to mom and like mom decides which language it wants better, and then we get back whatever they decide. That sort
I
of.
mean, I assume they would discuss it at a city council meeting if anyone wanted to go and present their point of view. But yeah, I think it's preventing I mean, if we agree, I personally just do want to make that point again, that I would take off that language. I don't remember adding it, but we clearly added it in the last meeting that says before it goes to the planning commission. And the reason is that I think that I don't want anyone to get the impression that the commission has the intent of trying to decide how the process goes and the timing of it and the chronology, because we are not experts in sort of the flow, the way the the planning staff people in the city is managing the chronology of these meetings. So I would take that out. And also, it has the benefit of our being able to say that, the language we wanted to add was just verbatim from the resolution by the city council last year. But I guess what I was saying is that it seems like we would just present, them. I mean, alternatively, we could say in this meeting, is there like a middle ground or another way of phrasing how, our what is our remit in terms of reviewing, giving input on major land use and development projects? That's why I said I think this comes down to the way you decide the word major. We could all probably opine about, well, maybe it's projects that, initiate a development agreement with the city or initiate an EIR. That's what I was trying to understand from Kyle Peralta is there a set of projects that promulgate, like, it clearly raises them up to the level of this is very important, has a big impact on the city. Is there some consistent, metric we can turn to or attribute that we can then say, okay, well, those projects we should be able to comment on. But I wasn't getting a clear, from my questions, I don't know if I had a definition that came from that around, okay, it's all projects that have development agreements, or it's all projects that have development agreements and EIRs. I wasn't sure if that made any sense. I don't feel like I know enough about that to know. From what he said, he was saying that some of them do, but it's at the initiation of the developer, and I just wasn't sure if that was a good definition. But I certainly think that the council is more educated about that. Yeah, he said applicants may request, so that did not seem like a good attribute to tie major to.
How many applicants request those? Right. I mean, I think as residents, we have some idea of what major means. And it's just kind of defining that in a way. And so like if I had to, I probably could list off a few projects, which I think probably have development agreements, but maybe so yeah, is there like one every couple of years? Is it like many projects that I am not thinking of that also get those?
Is Kyle still
Kyle,
are you on?
Yeah, so through the chair, I'm waiting for
Thank
an opportunity to chime in or be asked specifically for a question and answer there. I can definitely try to give some context. So a development agreement is not typical. It's certainly not the standard entitlement that an applicant or a project requires or goes through. It, as mentioned, it is a voluntary agreement between the city and an applicant. It's, as I mentioned before, it's really for these large multi-phase projects. The city does not get one a year. It's probably one gets filed every couple years, and it takes a while to go through the process. These are the multi-year entitlement projects. So just to list a couple that have gone through most recently, it's really been the large Meta projects. So the Meta East Campus or Classic Campus, when Meta came into the city in 2011 timeframe, received or entered into a development agreement with the city for some modifications to their trip or employment cap to trip cap conversion. The West Campus and the West Campus expansion projects for Meta also entered into development agreements with the city. And then we had a few in the downtown area. Springline, that project has a development agreement for some payments to the city. And then Willow Village, more recently, another meta project, 20-year project, multi-phase project, and the pending Parkline project. We don't have any other development agreement applications pending currently with the city. So hopefully that kind of provides the last 15 years of context. Prior to that, I think Menlo Gateway was the last one before that. So it is few and far between. A development project every couple of years will request one. It will take some time to go through the entitlement process. So it's not a frequent entitlement.
Kyle, do you have any feedback or creative ideas for us around? I think that I believe the commissioners, I'm not speaking for them, but we're all very reasonable people and we don't want to slow down the process. We know that there are some policies or guidelines around like how many meetings public meetings a developer be required to go to in the process of, doing a project with Menlo Park or something like that. So we don't want to create a lot of process as much as just we would like the opportunity to very specifically, very focused to look at those impacts with regard to accessibility and public streets impact and safety. Also, we're not here to I think this is a really creative commission. A lot of bikers here who have great ideas about how the residents use the streets and how we could do better. So I think part of this too is how do we inspire and work with developers, or at least give ideas that might be a little further than they want to go, but maybe Menlo Park, does some really great things for bikes and peds connected with the development even more than they were thinking or something. Of course, we like to offer ideas like that, but do you have any ideas for how to define those kinds of projects where it wouldn't be burdensome for the city, but it would be reasonable because the impact might be very big? Reasonable for an argument to be made that Complete Street should take a look at this because the impact is large.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think, the text on the screen here that was recommended by staff was a collaborative effort between Public Works and Community Development. And so that does reflect Community Development's recommendation. And as mentioned, there are a lot of implications or considerations for when a development project is going through the public review process. So a housing development project has a strict meeting limit of 5 meetings. Many housing development projects probably couldn't even consider accommodating a fifth or a Complete Streets Commission meeting, because that would probably put us over the meeting limit once you start factoring in other bodies that are advisory bodies that review certain aspects or have to be available to review if there's an appeal of something like an appeal of the entitlement to the council or an appeal of a tree permit that needs to go to the EQC during the process. So housing development projects have a very strict timeline, statutory requirements from the state in terms of meeting limits. Further, as mentioned previously, there is that dynamic between advisory bodies advising the council and the planning commission being an adjudicative body, legislatively required, and can act on permits for the most part. The majority of the permits that are adjudicative, use permits, architectural control permits. And that's why staff's recommendation really is to bring to the Complete Streets Commission a project when it includes an amendment to the general plan circulation element, because that is when the project will be going to the council. Complete Streets Commission review of the circulation element amendments would be forwarded to the council alongside the planning commission's consideration. So hopefully that helps provide a little bit of context of city staff's position and recommendation. And so I'm not sure I can provide any other or kind of ideas beyond that, but that was a very thoughtful process from the city staff's side to evaluate for what constitutes a major development project. And in our view, it really is when you have this circulation element or specific plan circulation chapter amendment, where the development project is modifying something on the city's long-term plans. Otherwise, development projects tend to conform to long-range plans. That's in the developer's interest as well. The city staff reviews a project for conformance with plans. And that's why we don't see a lot of circulation element amendments. We see other amendments to other plans, but not the circulation element, because that is off-site from the plan as well. So it's not part of the project site itself, if that makes sense. I'll just add, Willow Village was unique as a 64-acre site with roads through it that were being relocated Paseos that were adopted on the circulation element that were being modified and relocated. That's not typical of most development projects. They just don't rise to that scale and have that circulation element infrastructure identified on the project site through the general plan, through the circulation element specifically. Hopefully that kind of helps a little bit more context there.
I do think the concern that I have is that there are impacts which are not captured in the circulation plan and the transportation plans, which the master plans basically, which yeah, we are not able to address. And I think that that's really the major, I think, sticking point here is that without being given the opportunity to comment on those, then we are not giving the resident perspective on what those differences might be from the plan, as opposed to, right, there's the kind of mathematical vehicle miles traveled sort of perspective. And then, yeah, but I do understand, right, if we were to say, okay, anything that's going to go to city council, we would like to have a comment on. That's 2 additional meetings towards your 5 maximum, which I guess is,
I think that's
a lot. But
I think that didn't Kyle say that the 5 limit was for housing developments, but
oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Might one possible criterion to consider projects that trigger the transportation impact analysis? Because that to me feels like it speaks directly to the substance that we're meant to give feedback upon. I think it's a broader set of projects that would come to us than the once in 16 years criterion, which seems very narrow, given the mandate from the council, but maybe not so overly broad that it would slow down the process for like small scale developers. I believe the criterion for that is based on how much additional commuting is going to be added to the streets. I don't know all the criteria for the transportation impact analysis, but it's part of the environmental review, as I understand it, and it feels like that might be more targeted to our definition of major.
Do we have a sense from staff about how frequently projects require a traffic impact analysis?
Yeah,
Transportation analysis, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you.
if I may, and certainly Ms. Choi can probably answer this as well, but just from a planning perspective, it's pretty frequent. It's required anytime an environmental impact report is required. There may be other circumstances when it's required for other CEQA analyses. The concern there from a staff perspective is that the Planning Commission does have delegated authority from the City Council through the state legislature to approve and certify EIRs and adjudicative development project actions like use permits, architectural controls, which would also have a TIA associated with them. So the Planning Commission would be the decision-making body on that. So that's where this Planning Commission has been delegated that authority explicitly by state law.
Sorry, so you're saying that the Planning Commission is reviewing the transportation impact analysis?
Yeah, that's correct. As part of their actions or the review of entitlements and their action on a set of development reviews, or sorry, that's not a good answer. As part of the review of a development project, yes, the Planning Commission would review the transportation impact analysis, and as part of their approvals, consider that if they approve the project. And that's just like them certifying an environmental impact report. They would be reviewing the TIA alongside the project entitlements. And those projects don't always go to the council. So that's once again the distinction where the Planning Commission has a role delegated by the council by state law really to act on these projects, whereas the Complete Streets Commission advises to the council, not to the Planning Commission. So there's that dynamic that I mentioned earlier on in my remarks.
I don't think it precludes, providing input onto their process also. And I imagine the planning commission might benefit from having a process to gather feedback from the community on projects that relate to, transportation impacts. So my suggestion wasn't to claim that we would be becoming the decision makers on that. It's just the language, I think, was provide input and recommendations. So that to me felt like a reasonable criterion for defining major that would allow for improving their ability to be the decision makers based on input and recommendations that came from this group.
I like that idea. I mean, I appreciate your effort to see when it's appropriate within the current process for us to take a closer look as, representatives of the public. Thank you, Commissioner Raskoff. I mean, maybe when, if, this goes to the, we obviously turn the work plan in with 2 sentences of language and ask the city council for their opinion, we can say, one option, we've thought of different options, and, one might be that, we look at the transportation impact analysis, we may think of other options later. But again, I think these things are really far apart, and it is pretty discouraging. I actually didn't know that in the last 15 or 16 years, there was only one instance of coming to us for something. So yeah, I think we're pretty far apart. Again, I'm just returning to not just the city council's language, but, the fact that I feel like they really do encourage us to dive into these issues with a level of focus and granularity that can't be done at city council level. And they respect that we do that, and they want our input and recommendations.
Okay. Through the chair, if I may, would you like to, would it be helpful to provide some information on how the traffic impact analyses are done in the guidelines?
I think it was transportation impact.
Transportation impact, the TIA, yes.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Christiane, if you're on, in terms of guidelines that need to be considered when these assessments are done, and how we've managed those in the past.
Sure, yes. So the city does have a transportation impact analysis guidelines document, and we have criteria in terms of when TIA, as we commonly call it, are required. And so there's some exemptions. Usually it's kind of triggered at when a project either generates 100 daily trips, or it's, I was trying to pull it up here. So if it's, or I guess I should say what the exemptions are instead. It's when the trips are 100, there's less than 100 daily trips. If it's considered kind of a local serving retail project, and then when it's a residential or an office development that's in a low VMT area, and then local serving public facilities like libraries, police stations, fire stations, parks, those that are 10,000 square feet or less, and then projects that are compliant with the downtown specific plan. Those would not be required to do a TIA, but other projects that don't fill those criteria would. And so I do want to point out that there are some smaller, like what you would consider smaller projects that do require a TIA. One recent one was the I think it was 320 Sheridan Road, the flood school residential project. That one did require a TIA that went to the Planning Commission, that then later was appealed to the City Council. But I think the TIA requirement might be a little too broad, because there are a number of projects that are triggered by our TIA requirements, because a lot of them don't meet the exemption criteria.
Could you speak, Christiane, as to how we develop the guidelines in that process?
So that was, I don't know when the original guidelines were adopted, maybe in the late 1990s or something like that. And then we recently updated them in 2020 when the CEQA requirements for transportation went to VMT. And so we updated those in 2020 to include the VMT criteria. And then we updated them again in 2022 because we also have a travel demand model where we estimate kind of the future traffic projections out to 2040. And we made some updates to that as part of the Willow Village development. And so the some of the baseline numbers in the model had been updated. And so we needed to update our guidelines because they had went back to kind of a 2016 baseline at that time. And so now we've updated the guidelines a couple times to kind of reflect the VMT requirements that we now have to follow.
I looked up the guidelines. I see the 2020 document. It specifically calls out pedestrian, bicycle, and transit circulation issues. So to me, that actually sounds like an ideal criterion for how we would define major. And I think that the 100 trips per day rush hour criterion, that feels about right for how I would approach it, just from a common sense perspective. And I'm looking just like in the past of the list, it looks like it's a handful of them per year. So including the Parkland project.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I would make a motion
Mm-hmm.
to define major as projects that trigger the TIA process,
Mm-hmm.
and then provide input and recommendations, not a decision, input and recommendations to help inform the process at the Planning Commission.
Mhm.
That to me feels like a reasonable interpretation of the mandate that we have from City Council, especially because the guidelines specify the alternative transportation modes.
Thank you. I agree. We can certainly raise that as an alternative in the work plan. We can,
Do you want me to capture it now?
Yes, let's capture it now, and then we'll have a motion at the end to.
I think I want to clean this up because it's getting
all of
confusing.
those. My comment on that is I do remember receiving like public emails that the public had sent to us regarding the Flood Park School. So it is something which the public thinks of us when they think of projects like that. And in that sense, maybe it is appropriate. So.
Exactly.
So provide input and recommendations. Do you want to just add the, like when a TIA is triggered? Is that?
how about after, what do you think about on major land use and development projects that require a TIA or
Exactly.
trigger the,
Exactly.
yeah, for which a TIA is done, yeah.
Can we just take the major out? Since nobody knows.
No, it's fine.
that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. No one knows what it means to take it out. Provide input recommendations to city council. I thought it said, 1 second, as it relates to transportation. But major is it, wait. Provide recommendations to city council on major land development projects. As it
Yeah.
relates to transportation is kind of at the end, so maybe we say provide input recommendations to city council on major land. That's fine, that's fine. Yeah, keep it in, yeah.
Keep
No,
it as it relates.
I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know if I would keep it as it relates to
I
transportation.
think,
yeah.
I think we should keep that.
Yes, we
Okay.
did. I'm sorry, I don't know if that's the correct language to say for which a TIA is required.
Wait, and so wouldn't a TIA always relate to transportation?
So
So,
meaning that our input and recommendations would.
right, no, so what I was thinking, like, provide input and recommendations to the city council on major land use and development projects for which a TIA is required as it relates to like complete streets? I mean, is that a more, I don't know, because it's always going to be related to transportation
I
because
guess we
it's,
could say provide input and recommendations that relate to transportation. I mean, there might be other things and I
Sure.
don't know.
Yeah, I would, provide input and recommendations as related to transportation. Yeah.
The
We
city
could,
council.
from a complete streets.
I just want to add one, like in this big discussion that I was thinking of as we were going over all this. When the new community center was built in Bellhaven, I remember asking Kevin like, hey, when is the community center going to come before the Complete Streets Commission so we can talk about how there's only one road in and like what's going to happen with it? And like that, it just wasn't slated to come because of the conditions and the things. And so I think what I'm saying, just in terms of a broader discussion that happens after this work plan and in the next steps, is that there feels like a place where we should be having conversations about things, and we should be having very specific, like transportation related conversations about stuff that impacts residents' lives. And I feel that from up here a lot. And so, but I understand from the city perspective, all the like the legal wrangles and the 5 meetings and like how to get all of them calendared and agended. And I get that. And so I understand the resistance to like, I just want that to be part of the conversation. Like, I think that it would be great if there were room to have discussion about these transportation impacts specifically. Like whether it's a specific project that comes before us or what, like whether it's that we get an update on the different transportation impact that, right, in these TIAs that are like, what is being done and what should, I don't know, but I just think that it was a source of tension for me then. And I just kind of feel that thing. And as we get emails from people who are like, hey, when are you guys going to start talking about these major land use developments? And we're like, well, we're not. And I get that Planning Commission is also a place that people can make input. So I get that they're not all the way out of the loop, but I just, in terms of the bigger discussion, I think that is part of where the tension is how to include Complete Streets in the conversations about those big things. Sorry, that was a long.
If I may, about the TIA guidelines, this is a document that is adopted by City Council. It was brought to the commission, and then it becomes operational, right? Because these are guidelines that reflect the policies that you all propose and eventually City Council adopts. So for us, once we have those adopted guidelines, we implement them as staff. I think we would have concerns bringing projects to you all that trigger the TIA because we are following the guidelines that were adopted by City Council. And we would have to consider what that would mean in terms of the number of projects, the staff resources needed to bring all that to you all. And I would note that there's a difference between setting policy and then things becoming operational, which is really at the staff level.
Okay, thank you.
I think I just want to mention something about Commissioner Seaburn's comment. So first of all, I really appreciate your saying that because I do think that we haven't solved this. Like we haven't put these 2 links together and closed a gap, which is that 100%, I think the thing we're not saying is that the public really cares. The public really cares. Yes, we don't have city council meetings where tons of people show up, but man, do I hear about it all the time. When I was working with Elizabeth King when she was still on the council, we had a conversation with the police chief who was telling us, how many comments they get, people calling every week about safety of the streets and things like that. And it's people we know because we talk to our friends and our neighbors how much people really care about this. And they want to feel like the city is prioritizing it. And the way the city can do that is through us.
Okay, I think I'm going to propose we sort of take this to council, this discussion, on September 30th. I will be there. I will be available for questions. I think my fellow commissioners would also be welcome to be there to give public comment, or I don't know how it's going to get set up, or if you're not able to make it, send me your comments and I'll make sure to, if the opportunity arises, give those comments. But in the interest of time, unless anybody has further questions for the staff at this point, I think we've covered quite a lot of ground on this topic. Okay. And are we okay with this TIA requirement as it stands for this bullet point?
I think from what Commissioner Raskoff read, I agree with adding it.
Okay, great. The next bullet point is this EQC collaboration. This was language added to participate in an ad hoc subcommittee of the Complete Streets Commission comprised of both Complete Streets and Environmental Quality Commissioners to evaluate metrics to measure progress on and set specific long-term and annual goals. The subcommittee shall consist of no more than 3 EQC commissioners and no more than 3 CSE commissioners so as not to violate the Brown Act. And just some background on this. This was something that was set up so that we could help work with the EQC to, like it says, specific long-term goals like understanding vehicle miles traveled and how that impacts city from a transportation perspective and from an environmental quality perspective, and things of that nature. So.
I'm sorry, was this language about evaluating metrics? Was that added by staff or added by EQC during their meeting? I can go back and look at the video, but I'm just surprised that it's so narrowly defined because I know in our conversations that at least I was participating in with the EQC commissioners, it was more collaborating on the list of actions under CAP strategy number 4.
Yeah, I think that's the and set specific long-term and annual goals.
Oh.
This was language that the EQC approved in their work plan.
Okay.
So it hasn't been modified by staff. This is the same as what's in their work plan.
Okay, I'll look. Thank you.
So as part of this one, we would create a ad hoc subcommittee to collaborate with the EQC. Are there any comments on this last one, number 4 here? Questions? Okay. So can I get a motion to accept this current red line document to take to City Council for a proposal on September 30th? Commissioner Seabrand? And a second? Commissioner Raskoff? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't see you. Shall we vote? Yep. Okay. Please send me your thoughts if you have any thoughts so I can make sure that they are cohesive as we discuss with council. Okay. Number E4. Number E4 is to appoint 2025 to 2026 ad hoc subcommittees and dissolve all other subcommittees. I think Katrine will present this item.
I will present as PowerPoint is starting very slowly. It's tired. Oh, once I have a presentation I'll pull up, and I'll start by recapping what I had provided before about just the general guidelines about our ad hoc subcommittees in terms of limited in term, specific in nature, and what the deliverable needs to be, and then we'll dissolve once that deliverables been created. And I can pull up a list of here we go. I got the PowerPoint up. Okay. So an ad hoc subcommittee is limited in duration. It has a defined task. It's appointed by the commission to consider a specific matter, and then dissolved automatically upon submitting the final report and recommendation to the commission. No more than 3 commission members can serve on an ad hoc subcommittee. It needs to be less than a quorum. And an ad hoc subcommittee needs to be careful to not be a standing committee because that has different implications for the Brown Act. And it does not have a broad scope, and it is not ongoing indefinitely. Standing ongoing committees become Brown Act bodies, and that is a separate entity that requires further process and protocols. They must follow the Brown Act public meeting rules in terms of when you get together and are talking about something, posting agendas, et cetera. So the best practices for the ad hoc subcommittees are to align with the direction provided by the CSC by the City Council. The scope is narrow and specific, time limited, and the scope is within the roles and responsibility as defined for commissions. And it involves limited dealings with staff operations, but some check-ins may be required for final report out to the commission. In the staff report, you had discussed ad hoc subcommittees in our first meeting about the work plan back in June. And so from my notes, these were the 6 that you brought up. I'm not saying you need to do all of them, but this is what I had recorded as ones that you were interested in creating ad hoc subcommittees before. Just as a starting ground for the conversation tonight. And then I also have a list. The motion today is to appoint the subcommittees, but then also to dissolve the other subcommittees, because we have had them created in the past, but they haven't necessarily been dissolved. And so this is a list of existing ad hoc subcommittees for your awareness. And I don't know how active they are beyond the bike rack subcommittee. So these would be the ones that would be dissolved.
Can I ask a clarifying question about the first slide?
Which first line? Oh,
The first slide.
this one here.
Yeah, so dissolved automatically upon submitting its final report recommendation to the commission. Can we slightly revise that? Because in the case of the bike rack inventory, for example, your subcommittee, like you'll present to us, but the goal was really for you to present to the city council. So I think maybe it's just.
This is the definition I received from the city clerk. So I'm going to get clarification from her on what
Maybe
that
it could just say dissolved automatically upon submitting its final report recommendation. But I mean, some of these subcommittees could absolutely make presentations to the council.
I mean, does that have to be as a subcommittee, right? So like if when we give our report to the commission, after that, we're kind of reporting to council as
a subcommittee.
Okay.
I think. Am I wrong about that?
Not as the Complete Streets Commission.
But don't they dissolve automatically after like the year, like at the end of the work plan? Isn't there? I thought there was something inside that, because in the defined duration, it seemed like
each year you would appoint a new subcommittee.
Right.
But it should dissolve prior to that if the defined task is complete.
Oh,
So
I
it's kind of
see.
more of a question of, does it dissolve after a recommendation of the commission or the council. And I can clarify that with
Got
Judy
it.
and follow up.
So it can be, it will be dissolved at the end of a year. It can be dissolved after submission of a final report before that. Okay, got it.
You have on the next slide, time limited to 6 months. Sorry, it
That,
must be
so
this
those are
slide.
best practices, again, coming from our city clerk. Ideally, this doesn't drag on that long.
I see. Okay, but
Best practices, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I see that bullet point also says scope is narrow and specific, resulting in a final report to the CSC. I guess I don't know if I want that. It sounds very specific, but I don't know if it's completely accurate. And also, I don't know about well, I'll just say one thing really quickly. In the staff report where the proposed deliverable was a memo, I think that in my experience, like the folks up here are super busy, et cetera, and it might not be a memo as much as just like a quick presentation, a couple slides or something. So I think being that specific about it being a memo or, terminating it the minute, they present to commission and stuff, I think it's a bit limiting.
We can definitely edit the proposed deliverable. That's for you guys to set, so,
Okay.
yeah.
A report out to the commission would suffice.
Yes.
Yeah. Or just a report.
I think, do we need to call for public comment on this item? Are these still clarifying questions or is this more of a discussion?
That was my clarifying questions.
Okay. Are there other clarifying questions? Katrine, can you call for public comment?
For virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card from the back table, bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. Okay. I feel like I would like to orient the discussion a little bit. Do we need to have the proposed deliverable at the time of subcommittee creation? Or is that something that the subcommittee itself could meet and discuss a proposed deliverable and come back to our commission next month with?
I wonder if we could write it to be a memo or a presentation so that we're still recording something, but we leave it vague enough for you guys to.
And could that be updated at any?
I think so. I think the key is just to record something.
Okay.
And kind of for the accountability and record keeping. And if it needs to get modified, I think that's.
Okay, thank you.
What if it just always says recommendations for blah, 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 blah? Because then we're not saying what form it's in.
I think that could work.
And do we need to form all of our ad hoc subcommittees today, or are we forming, are we? Okay.
I don't think you're required to by any specific stipulation. There is just an effort of efficiency, so this doesn't keep needing to be put on the agenda.
Right.
But I don't think there's a rule that says they can only be formed once a year or anything like that.
But I wonder if we thought about sort of the, pacing and like just considering our work plan, like, are there 2 or 3 things on here that we really think that we could knock out quickly and throw some people on ad hoc subcommittees for and be like, okay, we're done. Now let's meet and talk about the next ad hoc subcommittee instead of 6 at a time and people trying to double up.
I agree with that.
Very reasonable. Yeah,
I feel
great
like,
idea.
I feel like these ad hoc, at least our experience on the bike rack inventory one, it feels, perhaps it doesn't always line up with the timeline of the work plan necessarily, right? So like we're kind of extending this into a couple months into the next year, and we're going to create this, renew the bike rack subcommittee just for like a month, which, which is fine, I guess, but
It will be a really quick success for us.
Yeah. And I do want to include so here I see climate and mobility options one, which is climate action plan strategy number 4. I think that one would explicitly be the collaboration with the EQC.
That's correct.
So that one we definitely should create and discuss who wants to be on that so that they can get started with that work.
I'm sorry, is that one called, I don't have that page in front of me anymore. Is that one called Climate and Mobility Options by the EQC?
No, that's just my quick attempt at giving
Oh,
it some
okay.
sort of,
I just wonder if it can be called like Climate Action Plan.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
I guess I have one piece of feedback about the ad hoc subcommittee recommendations. Thank you for doing those, Katrine. I know we've talked about this a million times, but I'm still a little bit confused why the driveway policy evaluation would be something that would fall on the commission to do. It seems like it's a little bit like the daylighting law implementation. It feels like something that the staff would do. So I don't want to push back work on the staff at all, but can someone maybe give an argument for why it belongs with us? Like, what's the benefit to the city for?
I know this answer.
You do?
And yes, because city
Okay.
council, it's somewhere in those rules, like city council specifically
Oh, they did.
tasked the Complete Streets Commission with the
Oh.
removal of parking by driveways. Like 2 or fewer, so whatever that goofy arcane, it comes to us because they said it had to come to us. They wanted to make sure we would always have something to do.
I honestly thought when there was that repeal of the Roble parking removal, Roble Avenue, right near the intersection of El Camino, where there's like a big tree. When that was the person appealed the removal of the tree, a property owner on that block, to city council, and city council said, we agree with you. So the commission was overruled. I thought then the city council asked staff to come up with a policy. So I must have misunderstood, but. Tell me, Azalea, like, just, can you help me understand why, like, it's more efficient for us to be doing that?
My understanding based on history, it is part of the municipal code. And my understanding at that time was that city council wanted didn't want these decisions to be made at the staff level. So
Okay.
they were included in
You're
the
right.
municipal code.
Okay, okay, thank you. Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much. I guess I have another clarifying question. So safe routes and community outreach, it seems like that's specifically focused on schools. So I would probably call that safe routes to schools and community outreach, the work that's being proposed and defined here. The other thing is, I know there's a new consultant to the city on safe routes to school. And I'd like to know if the consultant reports into the transportation team.
Yes, she does.
Who does she report into? I'm just curious.
Is it
Our associate planner, Cassandra Lopez. Cortez.
Okay.
I'm
The
sorry.
reason I asked that in part is because I think that subcommittee will be most effective if they're working with that person. I think the connection between that person and this commission has always been like kind of a big chasm, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because we don't want to duplicate what she does. We kind of want to know what she does. And it seems like there's a partnership there and that's just my opinion, that if that subcommittee gets approved, I think there has to be some sort of working relationship or at least sharing of goals and activities. Because some of this sounds like what that person would be doing, like strengthen public engagement. But I could be wrong. But
And oddly here, and I'm totally open to different opinions about this, but there is a part of me that would postpone the ad hoc subcommittee for that one specifically. Like if we're not doing everything all at once, and not because there's not important work to be done, but partly because in the nature of it not just being a subcommittee that exists all the time, then what would be like, I feel like I would want to know like, hey, what would be our specific goal towards safe routes and community outreach besides just going to the meetings every month? Right? So like, is there a specific, we want to work on this safe routes, this community outreach thing. And so let's wait and form a subcommittee when we have an idea about what specific thing we'd want to do. It doesn't mean we can't do a second subcommittee for safe routes after we finish. With so much fun, like, hey, let's try this project. And that way you're actually like wrapping up some subcommittee things instead of just, anyway, just thoughts.
And that's exactly the intent of the ad hoc subcommittee. In fact, what is drafted here is probably too vague. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So maybe that group could redraft something more specific.
In fact, all of this, I mean, this is just a starting point for the discussion, not meant, the purpose, you can write what you want it to be.
I think it's good. I know that in the past, there's been maybe some pushback about subcommittees being related to particular Complete Streets projects or locations, but I do agree with having a subcommittee on El Camino Real. Complete Streets, I think I would say. But anyway, I think that would be a good idea, in part because there's obviously more focus on it, more regional and multi-municipality level, and a lot of things stem from that.
Is that one that has immediate action items to complete?
Well, it looks like it says review multimodal access. So that sounds like a actual specific thing.
Okay.
Could kind of put together a report about like where we
Yeah.
are with El Camino, what's going on with the cities around us and where they are in the process of
Yeah, I can't really see
their
it.
Grand Boulevard.
Yeah.
That might be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says, I can't really read it, but I think it says identify opportunities and improve.
Oh, because quick
Connectivity.
search is in the way.
Yeah, there's like a little weird thing in the way, but.
Um,
So I think that's pretty specific, that one, actually.
Okay. What about the transportation master plan monitoring? That one also is specific. Might that one tie into the slow streets?
And
work
Vision Zero.
that's coming to, that you mentioned?
Where
earlier?
would Slow Streets go?
I think in there, and also Vision Zero.
Well, Vision Zero doesn't have one. This would probably be transportation master plan and Vision Zero monitoring.
Yeah, I don't even know if the monitoring is quite the right word, but I do think that Vision Zero is kind of core to the first one, because if you're going to be identifying potential projects for evaluation, and inclusion, I think you would probably be looking at the data from Vision Zero and the updated data to say, oh, wow, look at that. Like between the last 2 years, this one street's gotten even worse and it's not on our list or something, you know? Does anyone see anything missing? I mean, originally I wrote Slow Streets and Vision Zero, and then I thought that's probably in the first one.
Honestly, I'm thinking about e-bike guidelines, like to create something.
That's a little like bike rack inventory.
But
And-
that could go in Safe Routes Community Outreach too.
That, I think it could, first of all, I do think it should say Safe Routes to School. And the only reason I say that is because I know in the work plan, we've been using Safe Routes more generally,
Yes.
but I think this is a Safe Routes to School
but-
subcommittee.
Okay, but
Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it's just, when I read it.
well, what I would say, if we're doing it as like specific goals, you could have a safe route to school specific, like, hey, I want to work on this school related safe route. But you could also look like crossing over with TMP, like what's a bike network like that we could create, right? Like that could be a subcommittee and that would be, but if, I don't know, I just think of it as if your focus is like, I want, this route to, I mean, everything in Menlo Park goes to a school. So like in the end, everything's a safe route to school. But I guess I don't know why we would need to define it as safe route to school.
Okay.
If we're doing individual, like
Okay.
if we're doing smaller.
That's totally fine.
I would also
anyway.
say, I would see e-bike guidelines as being a completely separate stealth.
Yes, I do too. I agree with you. We've talked a lot about e-bikes, but I agree because bike rack inventory is a similar thing where it's like, we need a very specific thing that could probably be like done in a focused period of time. When you look at that definition that Katrine was showing us, obviously the city clerk as well supports like, I think it's supposed to be like, get in there, focus on this thing and do it. You know, they shouldn't just be sort of extended forever. I do think that we have a lot of information about e-bikes at this point. We have other municipalities who have guidelines. You know, we know how the Atherton police are enforcing it, et cetera. And so, and we've also talked to schools about e-bikes. And so I think we have, I think that could be like a separate sort of super focused thing. For sure.
I would join that subcommittee.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The other thing is we just know there's a lot of public concern. I mean, it's really crazy. It's a really big one. And that's the kind of thing we should be responsive to and have a instrument like a subcommittee to respond to it.
Agree.
So would you call that the e-bike policy?
e-bike policy.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Maybe e-bike policies and guidelines, because sometimes it might just be like some safety things.
It could be education. E-bike
Yeah.
policy is education. Reviewing it.
So I'm going to suggest that before we start adding too many more new subcommittees, we decide how many of these we want to prioritize creating tonight. I guess we don't really need a number, but are there any of these that we feel like maybe we could push back and create at a later date? For example, I'm sort of thinking about this transportation master plan tie into the slow streets work. And until we have an idea of how the slow streets projects are going to look, I feel like that makes sense to wait a little bit, but I'm open to, that's just the thought.
Because maybe once the slow streets comes to the commission, then would be a good time to appoint a subcommittee to sort of work on, like, you know, be able to talk about things while that's going.
Yeah, so at the time the Slow Streets project comes to the commission, will we still be able to give feedback on how that program is running? Okay.
Absolutely. Our plan is to present to you the the program itself, the documents, the process for your feedback.
Okay, thank you. And at that time, we may be, okay. Are there any others that people feel like might be?
Climate and mobility option seems like one that might be good to fill tonight if possible.
Yeah, I think, okay, yeah, all right, let's start, let's do the other way.
But
What-
renaming it.
What?
But renaming it.
Yes, the Climate Action Plan, this one is actually, shall be renamed the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee.
And you have the bike rack inventory.
Right.
So that's already 3, just saying.
Yeah. Why don't,
Go ahead. Maybe what we do is we put in one color like yellow, the ones that we want to fill tonight.
Mhm.
And then the blues will fill. Will move
And
out.
I can, let me quick,
we should staff these and then see where people are in terms of wanting to volunteer more time, I think, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
and we can leave the rest in a holding tank and
An e-bike. Those
yeah,
others.
I'll add that one to the list. But then I have the whole list here and then we can just fill in just the ones you want to fill in tonight. And I don't necessarily, I copied this over from when we appointed our chair and the way the minutes got recorded, I don't believe it needs to be an extremely formal process of nominations. I think you guys are just appointing members. So disregard my field here. We can do it more efficiently, hopefully.
I think bike rack inventory can be filled out as myself and Commissioner Bergen Bailey. who would like to volunteer for the e-bike policies and guidelines, since we've decided that that will be filled tonight?
Oh.
Commissioner Sebrian? Commissioner Herscher?
I would be interested in joining after the bike rack inventory is put to sleep.
Okay.
If unless anybody else is interested, because I do not.
Go for it.
Should we include Commissioner Bergen Bailey at this point, and then she just skips their first meeting?
Yeah, I think you guys can handle that with scheduling. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we go to driveway policy. I'm curious if there's, I truly don't feel equipped for this one. I don't think I have the skills.
Oh, but climate action plan, we wanted to fill tonight.
Okay,
Yeah, we
climate
definitely
action
did
plan,
fill
okay, yeah.
climate action plan.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I forgot. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was off. That's a good comment. Sorry.
Sorry.
Climate action plan. Okay, who wants to work on determine methods and metrics to measure and track progress in advancing climate action plan strategy with EQC folks? Does anyone want to do that?
I could volunteer for that one, but similarly, I would most likely be a late starter.
But, okay.
Commissioner Rennie?
Anyone else interested in that one?
Sure. Yep. Just
Okay. It's up to 3. I mean, if nobody else wants to volunteer. Okay. Okay. And then, what was the other one that we talked about? The safe routes to and community outreach one, Commissioner Askoff. So, which would be distinct from the e-bike policies and guidelines that's specifically
Yeah.
targeted towards. Yeah.
Just to clarify, also like as a parent volunteer at my kid's school, I definitely attend the city meetings.
Yeah.
I don't think that puts me in any Brown Act violation or anything.
No.
Commissioner Raskoff. Okay, confirming. Thank you.
Can you be on that one after you get off my crack door?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be on that one too then with those guys.
And did you want to add more detail into the purpose of the first iteration of the safe routes? Did you have a specific item you wanted to tackle in that?
I think we could talk about it.
I think that needs to be written at the time of creation of the subcommittee.
That could be in the subcommittee updates.
Sure.
You could come up with a thing,
We'll be like, we
right?
have an update.
I think Chair Eric Comas though is saying, do we have to have
I
that
think you have to
now?
have it now.
Oh,
Yeah.
You have to have a specific purpose for creating that hub.
Can we put a
subcommittee.
pin in it for now then?
Well, then we should do it, then we'll create that subcommittee when we have the
Correct,
purpose. Yeah.
No, why isn't the purpose just what's written here? Is this okay? Recommend, explore strategies to promote safe walking and biking. Is this not this?
There was comment that was a little bit too vague and broad.
Okay. Goodness.
So homework for those who have volunteered for this would be to come
Okay.
with a proposal next meeting
Sure.
for
All right, we'll
a
do that.
specific purpose.
Okay.
Since this is very important to our commission, I think as a whole. I
It is
think
very important.
We want to create this subcommittee, but
Okay, so this one's
we
being
should
moved.
be
till
to be
next time.
specific.
Okay, all right, then we'll come with some ideas.
I think 3 is a good. Yeah. 3 is a good number to start with. Especially if they're 3 like actual actionable, like we're gonna do something and.
I feel like we should do, am I crazy? It feels like the El Camino and the Transportation Master Plan are 2 really chunky ones. Should we think about how to staff those or should we wait? I'm happy to wait. I know it's late at night, but.
I feel like that's a wait.
Okay,
Well,
wait.
because I don't know that we know what we want to do for them.
Okay.
Either.
All righty.
Yeah.
That new requirement.
Yeah, I think having the context for
It is.
these. I think having the context that we need to have very specific purposes helps clarify this, and we can come back. But I think we have started a great process on this.
Yes, we have. Bravo.
What do you? Yes. Okay. Well, we can also ask, well, let me continue. Ask the commission. their thoughts. Where are we? Okay, wait, do I have a motion to appoint these top three subcommittees? E-bike policies and guidelines, climate action plan, and bike rack inventory, and dissolve all other subcommittees as they stand.
Meredith is making a motion.
Motion?
I'll second.
And
Sorry, was that, who
Commissioner
seconded?
Herscher can be the
Okay.
second. Sorry, Sally. And please vote. Raise your hand if approved. Okay. Under informational items, item F. City staff provides an update on matters of importance to the commission. Informational items are not action items. However, a commissioner, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. The first informational item tonight is F1, update on major project status. Katrine?
I have an update. The Middle Avenue Complete Streets Project and the crossing improvement at El Camino Real and Ravenswood is under construction right now.
Yay.
And our 2025 annual street resurfacing efforts are substantially complete. Many streets were resurfaced. The Middlefield and Willow Road merge adjusted a little bit. And the bike lane improved, the buffers changed a little bit there. It's a little bit more of a smoother transition. And we are waiting, there will be a minor improvement at Middlefield and Woodland Avenue still to come. And that concludes my updates on major project status.
Thank you. Katrine, could you please call for public comment?
Virtual attendees who wish to provide public comment, you may engage the raised hand feature, or if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone, press *9 to raise your virtual hand. If you are participating in person, please fill out a speaker card at the back table, bring it to the clerk's desk, and please wait for your name to be called. You can then step up to the podium to make your comment. Having no one in queue for public comment, I return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. Item G, committee/subcommittee reports. So the bike rack commission subcommittee had an update. I would like to poll our commission.
Okay, Sally's already packed. She's ready to go.
No, sorry, I'm here. I'm just, my son is.
No. You're,
So
Apology.
we
had come prepared.
We have come prepared. We would like to present our findings to City Council, and we have come prepared with our proposed slides for feedback. It is late, and
it is also
if
9:30.
if people don't feel willing to give comment right now, then
Well,
we can
so
postpone.
here's a question for Katrine. Can we send our deck to the commissioners with the caveat, no one's talking to each other, just send any feedback to myself, and
Do you think this would take like 10 minutes?
It's 15 slides.
I think we can be even under 10.
We can do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Commissioners?
You guys okay with it? Don't, you
I'm
can't
gonna
say,
take my
you
seat.
can't say yes and then hate us.
We will-
Okay,
we
that's,
will be quick. We will be brief.
all right, let's do it. Let's do it.
And okay.
Okay.
So we'll probably, Katrine, please, next slide. So we had a citywide goal of reducing vehicle miles traveled by 25% by 2030. And in order to do that, we all understand why we need to make active transport more attractive. But one of the things was City Council had asked us to survey the bike racks in order to understand how the community feels about our bike storage system in the city. Next slide. So the goal of what we were doing was, where are our bike racks and are they working for our community? So are there enough bike racks? Are they big enough to hold cargo bikes or tandem bikes with children? Are they appropriately located? Are they safe spaces? Are they in need of repair? Are they easy to find? All of these kinds of questions. And here's an example of a coffee bar downtown where there is one bike rack here and a few bikes locked to street signs and trees. When half a block down, there was a totally empty bike rack, which people did not see and felt uncomfortable. And if they saw it, they might have felt uncomfortable with how far it was from the business. So this was one of the examples of the issues that we see in bike rack positioning. And next slide. So we elected to run a survey. That survey ran during Bike Month, and we advertised it in many, many distribution channels. You guys may have heard us talking about it or seen flyers around town or in the newsletters. And we got so many responses. How many responses did we end up with?
150
responses.
over, I think 165.
Yeah, more than 150 responses. On the next slide, we have what this was the first question, which was, or second question, what kind of bike or scooter do people in your household use? Which I think is a very relevant question for this. So most people ride road or commuter bikes, and about half of the people who answered had children who rode their own bike. But also relevant here are the quarter of respondents who ride electric bikes or cargo bikes, which are sometimes larger and need different parking facilities.
Can I ask a quick
Mhm.
question? On the, I know I'm like delay it, but electric bike, cargo bike, do you think that people who had cargo bikes, do you think you click electric and cargo?
Yeah, so this was a click all that apply to you. I guess, I don't know, maybe Meredith knows more about this, but like,
The electric bike answerers were cargo bike.
But could have been.
could have been. And there are probably, for example, you could have an electric bike that's not a cargo bike. You could also have a cargo bike which is not electric. So,
Right.
but
I think one of the interesting things is if you just grouped them as a bike that's larger than a road bike, it gets even bigger, right? You start grouping like a bike with trailer and all this other stuff, and it just gets bigger and bigger. Tag along bike, yeah.
Quick question. What's a tricycle bike and how is that different than a recumbent bike?
So a tricycle
It has a bucket.
in the back usually.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So a tricycle bike looks, I think, is just right.
And we could relabel that as bucket bike. That'd be fine.
And then, yeah, nobody rode. There are no recumbent bike riders who responded to our survey.
Correct. All right, and oh, do you?
Did you take our survey?
Okay, well, all right.
You didn't reply to the survey.
And now we know. Ultimately, really what we found in doing the survey is, I'm sorry, can we go back to the city needs more bike racks, which was very aptly titled, thank you. That we just need more. It was really interesting that a lot of the survey respondents were very hesitant to walk less than, any more than 1 to 2 blocks. And this is from the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals about short-term users. And so the parking installation needs to be readily visible and self-explanatory. For some very specific places mentioned in the survey, Trader Joe's came up a lot. Clearly parks, I think it's been mentioned here that after the middle project that Nealon, I believe, had no bike racks for a while there. Sharon Park Shopping Center, some of the small markets on Willow, and then El Camino also came up around Monticelli's, Kepler's, Cafe Barone area. Next slide, please. Oh, and I was looking at my laptop. Birches Park specifically came up multiple times, both in needing more bike racks and needing them in new locations. For instance, at the playground, there is not a bike rack. Also recognizing that this is an area that's very family oriented, that does have cargo bikes, that do need larger and kind of different bike racks. You'll see the picture there at the bottom. Also, that bike has been there for about a year and is evidently correct. That's at Arriaga, yeah. And multiple respondents to the survey have mentioned reporting it to the city. It's sitting there with no seat and no front wheel, but has evidently been there for, I think, close on a year, according to the respondents. Next slide, please. So here you can see the existing racks are there in green and the racks needed are in red. If they're next to a green arrow, that means that simply we need more, that these racks tend to be filled per survey respondents and honestly self-reporting as well. Next slide, please. Downtown as well. Katrina, will you go ahead and click on that Menlo Park Bike Rack GIS map? This was put together by a fellow Safe Routes to School parent, Adrian. Oh, she has a screenshot. Is it next? Oh, never mind. We'll come back to that. Thank you, Katrina. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Very nice. Who actually walked downtown to map out where the bike racks are. And this was very interesting because of some of the survey respondents. I ended up walking downtown. People who've been talking about some damaged bike racks, and I was trying to figure out where those might be. And an interesting aspect of this is that there's really no consistency in downtown as far as both location and type of rack. Just personally, I saw 5 separate rack types, from the Wave to the Staple to super cute ones that actually look like bikes. But if I was coming to downtown, I would not necessarily know where to look for them. Any questions on that? But I'll keep going as it is late. People were, there was a lot of concern about bike theft, specifically about downtown and the Burgess area. A lot of folks mentioning that they really wanted bike racks to be where they could see their bikes kind of from like the front area of whatever store they were patronizing. Sorry, Katrina, next slide. I also have my laptop. It's very confusing.
Actually, can you back up? Sorry.
For sure.
But see, even school parks and grocery stores over 50%. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Signage and consistent placement of the bike racks would help inexperienced bikers. And just knowing that when you show up to downtown, if you do choose to bike, that you will be able to figure out where to place your bike, and that you will feel safe leaving it. Katrina, next slide.
Green arrow showed up there.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I put
Thank
the
you.
animations in for.
I was not prepared for the animations. It's okay. Your turn.
Yeah, so as Meredith mentioned, there are many different kinds of bike racks. There's design of bike racks, which helps people identify that a bike rack is there consistently, but there's also bike rack availability for different types of bikes. So in our city, almost half of the bikes which are stolen in a year are unsecured. And particularly what is challenging is to find cargo bike parking spaces. So this is cargo bike parking at the Stanford Mall. You can see that it's clearly marked as cargo bike parking, and the amount of space that's required for it is larger than a typical amount of space that you might get in our spaces. So this is really important in Burgess in particular and downtown where families go. Next slide. And we could also do just a thought that Stanford Mall and Caltrain also have bike lockers, which could be a program run by the city, which would allow for people to more securely lock their bikes in ways which they feel comfortable, though this might not account for cargo bikes. Next slide. And also, bike racks should be in safe and well-lit areas. So one of our survey respondents suggested that there is no bike rack parking at the Big Five, CVS, Bevmo parking area. There is this delightful bike parking with many bike parking spots, but it's on the other side of the parking lot from the building. It's right next to these dumpsters. It's right next to the tracks. It doesn't seem very welcoming, and it was totally empty, and people did not know about it. And in fact came up in our survey. So this is, so I guess there is some parking there in front of Big Five, but this is just to point out that having the bike racks be clearly labeled and easily, like, you should feel safe when you're unlocking and unlocking your bike. That's important.
I wheel my bike into Staples because there's not even a post to lock it to.
There's a whole corral, but
Right. So knows.
yeah. This is actually fairly well lit. It's also, but but it is next to the dumpster, which is why people feel uncomfortable with
It was interesting because it's clearly a very well-designed, let me take that back. It was clearly thought, like people put thought into it, but perhaps not how people actually want to use it.
Mhm. Okay, next slide.
So because we had eyes on this, we did gather a little bit of extra information. We gave people a chance to kind of just comment. And e-bike safety and driver education certainly came up. People like the e-bikes. It increases accessibility to much more of the city. It takes cars off the road if you can be on your e-bike instead, with it giving you that larger accessibility. But there was a lot of concern about how people, specifically minors, are using them. You can see some quotes from the survey here that kind of specifically target juvenile riders. And then also people talking about cars themselves making cyclists feel unsafe. Some talk about increasing driver education as being a possibility to improve cyclist safety and indeed the feeling of safety as well. Next slide. So this is the network safety map. This is online, and honestly, I didn't know a lot about this until we started doing this. And we really liked this quote. I just want to acknowledge that I do bike sometimes, but I don't bike as much as I would if I felt safer on the roads. This map is a possibility for citizens or just folks coming in Menlo Park to use to figure out the type of bike lanes that they could be using to get to specific spots. But again, I think that this just supports that people are not feeling particularly safe or motivated to bike to some of the spots and areas that they want to get to. Next slide. So our takeaways are really that more bike racks overall are needed, including bike racks that are accessible, that feel safe to the consumer of the bike rack. That we need to be thinking about the types that we have in the city and where they are. The staple bike rack is kind of best practice, not the wave. And that they should also be located close to businesses, easy to find in well-lit areas. And then bike safety as well, that people need to feel that comfort and safety. A lot of suggestions for protected bike lanes and more designated bike lanes. And then again, under the education umbrella, education concerning e-bike usage, including enforcement for minors, came up a lot. And then also driver knowledge, increasing safety for all road users. Next and last slide. These were specific locations that were mentioned multiple times. In general, at Willow and Hamilton, Willow and Newbridge, the Sharon Heights Shopping Center. And then downtown, we were thinking every right-hand corner with daylighting and some other opportunities to have a bike corral on the right-hand corner of each of the blocks, or evenly spaced down the side of the sidewalk. When I was walking downtown, there was one block, I think it was between Crane and Chestnut, that had a bike rack about every 20 to 30 feet. The very next block had 2 total, and they were right next to each other. So there's just not a level of consistency where people can expect to leave their bikes. And then that ties into not being able to see them or easily access them from the spaces that they want to patronize. Again, Trader Joe's came up so many times. People really want to bike there. And then the El Camino area with Cafe Barone, Kepler's, and then the whole Burgess complex. More parking by the pool. At the pool right now is only wave parking, bike racks. No cargo space unless you are lucky enough to get there before any other cargo bike, and you can do it on either end. The baseball field has none, the playground has none. The library has them, but needs more. And city council chambers has some, but they're not good. And that is all.
It speaks to the feeling of they're in the corners where it's dark.
Yeah. The very first time I came to a commission meeting, I was like, where do I leave my bike? I could not find it. And then when I did, I was like, I don't want to go there.
I'll second that.
I think so. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard when we started this that there are some bike racks that are like in storage and available to install, and I don't know how many those there are for that, which I think if we could get a number for that, that would probably be helpful for that question.
We have our maintenance team did an inventory, so we can circle back.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I think in terms of like proposing specific numbers for like by the library and by the pool and stuff, I feel like that might be difficult for us, but the rest of them, it's sort of one per.
And it would also be delineating what areas would need cargo bike parking versus normal bike parking.
Could you cut the results to be like, okay, they responded cargo bike, where do you think they needed to see? I don't know. It's hard to know.
Maybe, and certainly anywhere like family oriented. Burgess, parts of downtown like by Cheeky Monkey, the library would certainly lend itself really well to just assuming that there's a need for cargo bike parking.
Yeah. And sometimes I wonder if being creative in like, sometimes like right after school, the library bike parking is packed.
Yeah.
Right? 3 hours after school gets out, it's empty. And so like, how do you find ways to make that, they could be bike racks, but also they're in areas that could be used for something else if bikes aren't parking there. So just.
Yeah. Attention.
Another distinction to make would be places like Trader Joe's and the Sharon Heights shopping center are private property. And so is it the public right of way adjacent to it, clarifying in that recommendation?
Yeah, and at Trader Joe's right now, it's just along the sidewalk, so it would be city. But based on the number of people talking about Trader Joe's, I halfway want to go in and talk to the manager and be like, just take a parking spot and turn it into bike parking. It will make everybody so happy.
Could we do that in the public on-street parking in front of Trader Joe's?
Just start parking bikes there.
Like put bike racks into that parking space?
So this is very helpful because I think the next step is sort of assessing the inventory, how many, there is a lot of limited space in downtown. And so I think to your point, we have to get very creative. We did so in front of Starbucks, right? We took parking spaces and put bike racks. So I think we're going to have to look into the public right of way to add these.
And one question I would have about the bike rack inventory that Public Works has currently stored would be what kind?
Exactly.
Yeah, because Katrina was kind enough to send me the information from the Association for Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals, and like their least favorite type is the wave.
I don't believe we have any waves in.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Amazing. Well done.
They would be they're a staple of some sort.
Okay. Yeah, either the one with the Menlo Park, we have the decorated ones by the library, or just the staple type. But I believe our maintenance team did the inventory and identified the type.
Okay. Athena and I actually had an interesting conversation in that some of the staple style are so like artistic that they almost look like art and not necessarily a bike rack. And over by, I think it's Phil's by the Caltrain station, actually has a small like engraving of a cyclist on these kind of like cool, kind of like twisted staple style bike racks, indicating that it's not public art. Like, please chain your bike to here, which I thought was kind of interesting. Because some of ours, the City of Menlo Park ones, are really attractive, but I could see potentially somebody being like, is this a bike rack? Is it?
I
don't know.
I didn't know they were bike racks.
Yeah, maybe somebody inexperienced might.
And then
this led to a
I
conversation.
processed
Yeah,
it as a bike rack, but it did take me a couple trips downtown to realize they were bike racks.
Just an interesting thought. Yeah. And I would actually love feedback on this. One thing I would kind of like to say when we present to council is downtown was just so interesting because it was so inconsistent. And I know that there's a lot of talk about revitalizing downtown and et cetera, et cetera. Thoughts on saying, if we're going to move forward with any sort of revitalization plan, could part of that be inserting very specific and very deliberate bike rack locations and bike parking? I think Miss Mitch is nodding. Everybody, yeah? Okay. right, I think we'll insert that then.
Yes, and we've been waiting for your assessment and your feedback because that really just informs, and we understand that we have a need in downtown, so it just folds into that conversation.
And seeing bike racks is a really good reminder that you could have ridden a bike.
That's it from us. But if anybody has any, like, you sleep on it and remember anything, please email myself and Athena. Now that we've done this out loud, there's a couple things I do want to change, and I would love to incorporate any feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Meeting. I will adjourn the meeting now at 9:53. Thank you, everybody.